addresses. And I'd like everyone to stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Routine matters. Board minutes of March 12th, 2024. What's the word I'm supposed to use, Scott?
I'll accept.
For the board minutes, what was the word you suggested that I use for accepting the board minutes?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. First, we have a presentation from FBLA 2024 State Leadership Conference, April 10th through April 12th, with Joseph R. Floreno, Rochester Riverside Convention Center, presented by Jake Smith.
Real quick, I'm just here seeking permission to go to the New York State FBLA conference. I'm here on behalf of the New York State, or the Canastota middle level and high school FBLA. Just seeking to bring 18 members, 19 members counting. There's 18 that I'm worried about, and Nicole as well, with the state going to participate in competitions, in a lot of social events. We have, as I mentioned, we have 18 total students ranging from 5th grade to 10th grade. There would be two adults, myself and Ms. Ray, as the advisors for that conference. A lot of great experiences for the kids to have. You guys have any questions on any details about the conference?
How many are 5th grade to lower?
So there's 2 5th graders. We have 2 5th graders. We have 4 6th graders. Then the majority are 7th graders. Then we have 4 high school students, counting Nicole. So we have three female high schoolers, and then mostly 7th grade. That I will say that about 90% of this crew attended last year. They know the expectation. They know, what it's about, and then really happy to retain them and have them come back. Most of them did finish first last year in their categories, so they're looking to try a new category and see if they're as good as that as they were the one last year.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you. Second thing on the agenda is the pre-K program proposal overview by Sean.
The clicker disappeared.
Sorry. Where'd it go?
There it is.
Oh.
I thought I was all set. I put it over there. But okay, I know where it is, and it's gone. All right. Good evening, everyone. There's a couple of. The intention is to provide an overview of a couple of proposals that are going to be brought forward both to the board but also to the public. It's really going to be 2 parts to this presentation. One was a proposed change in vendor for pre-K services. The second is the overall big picture presentation on the potential reconfiguration of grade levels in the district. So they sort of tie together. There are a couple of pieces that Tracy and I will go back and forth on with the different pieces, and we'll tie everything together. But we thank everybody for coming. So important point to make anytime we look at anything, and when we look at anything that has a substantial impact on the operation of the district. When I say operation of the district, the top priority is how does it impact kids? So those are the two of the huge guiding questions type of consideration of the district. Is it something that's good for the kids? And we say kids, we're talking about our entire educational continuum. The other question is this better for the operation of the district? And there are a lot of factors that go into that. So the decision-making standard, if you will, that we look at these types of questions through, the lens that we look at it through, is what is best for all kids, and are we being respectful to taxpayers as we navigate through that process? So it's always the balance, right? If you have unlimited funds, you can do all kinds of things. So how do we get the most effective program for students, responsible program for students, and how do we do it in a cost-effective way? And one obviously impacts the other. So this process, I think, gives us a good example of some of the things that we just want to reinforce with everyone and keep in mind as we navigate through this process. That I know there are a lot of questions, concerns, thoughts people have about these types of subjects, and they're always inevitably, that's understandable. We understand that as much as sometimes people don't agree on everything, hopefully everybody in the room has one common thing, is that we want good things for the kids of this community, right? And so there are different roles that we have to take on. If every time we had a thought that could end up being a major shift in the district operation, if every time we said, hey everybody, we're thinking we might do this, we're thinking we might do that, it'd drive everybody crazy. Not only would I be driven crazy, everybody would, because there's a lot to that. That's our full-time job, and we'd argue probably more than a full-time job, is navigating through these things. Everybody in the room, everybody out in the Canastota community has an obvious interest in these things too, but our role is to get into the real detailed level, to dig deep into these questions, evaluate and assess something that might be a viable option or may not be a viable option for the district. So before we just say, hey, this is something that we're thinking about doing, we have to do our homework. And so the things that we're going to talk about today involve many, many hours of doing our homework. Feedback, this is key. Feedback is obviously a big part of this whole process as well. But we have to give people something to actually react to. So for example, let's take the rollout of some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight, whether it's pre-K or whether it's a general looking at how the district is configured. We have to look at a lot of things before we can give anybody any answers on anything. We have to understand fully what are all the cost implications of any type of move. And what are the program implications on any type of move. And we'll say this, and this is a repeated theme because there are many things well beyond the scope of the things that we're talking about tonight, in which those things are evaluated through that lens. It's not just about money. I'll keep saying that because I've heard some people, there's undercurrent, it's about saving $1. Absolutely not just about saving $1. It's about looking at what is the program we get for the cost that's expensed. Okay, that's what we're always going to be looking at, both and how they're balanced together. So when we get to a point, and here we are, we're here at the point where we've looked at some of the options available to us. We feel like we're in a better position to be able to start making recommendations. Then certainly we want feedback and questions, because the program's going to be implemented. Anything we do is going to be better if it's informed by responding to questions or points that the community wants to make. We just talked about this already. So, and again, the process that we're going through, okay, back a while ago, and Tracy's going to talk more about this, for example, in the case of pre-K, there was a specific concern that came up that we need to look at, right? Because there was a specific financial concern that she spent a lot of time looking at, asking for information, analyzing. Okay, so that sort of started it. And then we went to, researching all of the different pieces of it. We're at the point where we have formulated a preliminary recommendation. When we got to that point, we wanted to have an internal conversation, right? So we had discussions with staff, for example, on our staff development day, where we talked about these are some things that the district is looking to implement before we went outside to the general public, with the idea that we thought that was a logical thing that made sense. People aren't going to read about it the next day or on Facebook or whatever. We had a conversation with our staff about that process. Here we are with a public overview presentation. That's going to be informed by the types of questions that we have received. The intent was to be able to provide a public presentation, an overview, because we knew a lot of the questions. We can anticipate a lot of the questions that people are going to have. When we were getting a ton of questions, I think, maybe that's a product of the fact that we didn't just announce this widely to everybody. We did have internal conversations within the employees of the district. So I think when that word gets out, we still get a bunch of questions, right? So that's when we said, okay, to make sure that we can include all of these questions that people are concerned with, we will gather those and we'll incorporate them into our presentation. So I think that the vast majority of the questions have been sort of pared down to the point where a lot of those are going to be answered in the context of the presentation tonight. Now, this is just the beginning in the sense that we're doing the public presentation, but we're going to be also announcing multiple dates and times where we're going to have opportunities for people to come in and ask have further discussion. We are going to be posting, for example, a Q&A document on the heels of tonight's presentation that will take a lot of those questions that you've asked, put it in a sort of a quick reference form that you can access, and we'll keep adding to that Q&A document as we move through the coming days. So, a couple of things right before I hand over the next piece to Tracy to get into specifically the pre-K recommendation. Why do we look at change? Because obviously, from you're talking about, from a superintendent standpoint, a business official, a board standpoint, it's often easier to not really do anything different, right? It's easier, certainly in my day, it's easier if I don't look to change things. But if we're trying to use that guide of, is there a way that we can improve our programming or our finances? Is there a better way for us to look at things? Then we feel like we have an obligation to do that. So this framed a lot of it. When we're talking about big picture, I'll bounce back to big picture for a minute because pre-K obviously is a key component, but when we're talking big picture reconfiguration, looking at how we could best arrange our grade levels in our buildings. This is a huge part of it, and we've heard this from the comments repeatedly, especially since COVID, right? That there is a lot of challenges that our students face, a lot of challenges. So can we arrange ourselves in a way that we can provide support services can we do something that is going to help them? So climate in schools is tough. It's tough, for example, to be a middle school. A lot of what we talked about and what we'll talk about tonight is, the concept of a middle school, not just the walls of a building, but the middle school concept that we'll get into a little bit, of which there's decades of research behind. Those kids, if you're looking at kids 10, 11, 12, 13 years old in that age range, huge, huge challenges, right? And it's a lot tougher to be a kid these days than it was when an old guy like me was in school, right? You'd have the normal interactions with people, with peers. Everybody has those kinds of things. Everybody doesn't always get along. It's a lot more difficult today, right? What's changed? We all know what's changed, right? The wild west of social media has changed it. It makes everything tougher because people don't tend to interact face to face. It's a lot easier to interact in other ways, and that distance leads to, in a lot of cases, confusion, lack of accurate information, and we go, right? Hurt feelings, bad blood between kids that can build and fester, so when they finally do come eye to eye, now we have a problem. So, things that are said in the school. We've put a lot of time and energy in saying, how do we counteract that? We're talking about things which we'll get a little bit into more with some of the support resources like our satellite mental health clinic or connected community schools and a variety of things, entities that we're trying to partner with. But if you just think of some of the things that are said in the school, right? People telling people that they're worthless. People telling people that they're awful or bad or they're insulting somebody's family and those sorts of things, right? And we say, yeah, that's terrible. It's bad. It's not the way a civil society would operate, right? And I'm not even talking about kids, right? How does a kid who's 10, 11, 12 years old react to those things when they don't necessarily have the tools to cope with some of those challenges? It's like some of the things I was just talking about that are said, well, those are things that adults say in our school community. So I'm a big boy, and I can date some of those comments are things that I'm called every day, right? I'm okay because I'm an adult who has tools to navigate through those things, right? We need to make sure that the kids have the tools to be able to navigate through those types of challenges. So we take this incredibly seriously. It's a huge priority for the district, and tonight we're going to outline some of the ways, more specifically, that this can help get us to a better place. So we're going to get into the pre-K discussion. So I'm going to have Ms. Leone come up here, and do you want to control the clicker?
Good evening, everybody. Business official. I'm nearing my second year here in Canastota, so for those of you that don't know me, Tracy Leone, and I want to just take a second before we get moving into this topic to say I'm really pleased to see so many people here to listen and come here in person and just to be here for the presentation. So kudos to everybody. Thank you. And before we get into some of the conversation here, please know that my email and my phone number is always available. So part of my job not only is to safeguard the district and make sure that we're financially salvable, but also to make sure that people understand the pieces, and they're not easy, right? So sometimes I talk and I know people's eyes gloss over and they lose focus and nobody wants to listen to me talk about some of the topics that I talk about. And I understand that. But if there's ever a question, please feel free to call or email me. I'm more than happy to sit down with anybody at any time if there's something that I can help you understand. And I'm not an expert. I rely on experts to help us all make decisions and recommendations. And we're going to talk about pre-K a bit here, and why are we talking about pre-K? This is not a new conversation for me. This is a topic and a conversation that I brought to the Finance Committee a year ago when I walked into this district, and I looked at the, and I'm going to talk about two things. I'm not talking about the program right now. I'm talking about the cost structure. And what does that mean to Canastota, and what does it mean to the budget, and what does it mean to the local taxpayer and the local share of that program? So when I went through that, we did have a local share, and I think that originally when the program was started, there was an expectation that there was going to be no local share. The cost of the program was going to be offset by the grant funding that was, as we increased. So we had half-day programs, we went full-day programs, and then we added a 3-year-old program, we added another section. So there's been an increase in service and pre-K services over the last several years. We always have to come back and look at it and say, right, are we getting the service that we expected to get programmatically? And that's not a dispute that there's an issue or something was wrong with the program service. My concern was the local share, and we were unable to maximize. We're not maximizing. Last year we did not maximize, and this year we're not maximizing our grants. So that's part of this. UPK we'll talk about as we get in here, but so I just want to start. Why did this topic come up? The topic came up a year ago, and I brought it to finance and said, hey, we need to take a look at this, and we need to ensure that we can sustain this going forward as revenue sources start to decline. We need to make sure that we can continue to offer a program, and what does that look like? So that's where the conversation started. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about cost. I am not getting into the very specific details. Pre-K funding is complex at best. We'll talk a little bit about it, kind of at the 100,000 view, the pieces of the funding. So right now, we're looking at one of the things we need to do as a district is we need to maximize that grant funding. Okay, so currently, we have UPK funds that are state monies, and we have some federal money, which is also UPK. So 2 sources of state money. And then we have some BOCES aid that we're driving because we use that service, and we'll talk about that because our aid that we drive is not on the program. It is on the supervision of the program. Okay? So last year, this year, our local share is just over $200,000. Local share. Okay? Projecting out, again, looking at this last year, the expectation as we were moving into 23-24 is that we would have the ability to maximize $218,000 of federal allocation that was allocated to Canastota. When I completed that grant, and it came back around September, October to the school district denied, that was a problem. So we're getting $62,000 out of that anticipated $218,000. And again, this is where the complex piece comes in, and I can sit down and go through charts with you and bring folks in if somebody really wants to get into the details of this. But funding is based on at a slot, and they're half-time, and they're full-time, and there's state slots, and there's federal slots, and they can't be double counted, and there's TPK slots, and each of those slots are funded in a manner first come, first serve. Long and short of it is, I expected $218,000 of federal money that if you go onto the state website or the federal website says is allocated to Canastota. That made me happy. We were not approved because the slots do not qualify. Okay. Hence, our local share. Again, conversation and looking forward. What does this mean for 24-25? What does this mean for 25-26? How do we continue to sustain a local share of that caliber? So we can look at the classes. Currently, we offer 4. We have 72 slots. So one of the conversations that we started looking at, started having, regardless if there's a vendor change, regardless of who's providing the service, we will be moving to 3 classes. So our slots will go from 72 to 54 because we cannot maximize our funding, and we can't. So I'll back up a second. 72 slots currently today. We have 61 children registered. We have to pay for 72 slots. That's the way the program works. I don't get funded for 72 slots. So that's the first piece of our shortfall.
But we have to pay for the 72 slots.
Yes, because it's a program. You're paying for the program. You're paying for the
there's a
section.
shortfall.
There's a shortfall to begin with. So you're paying for a section. So again, So step one, how do we start to reduce this, right? So that was the first part of the investigation, of the analyzation, of looking at how do we mitigate the local share to taxpayers. Again, so here's what I'm talking about. We have our UPK funding, we have federal funding available to us. Our total approved funding is $352,000. Our total allocation that we could access if everything lined up, if we were full, and if all of the slots qualify the way that they're supposed to, is $507,000. We're not able to maximize our money. So that makes me take pause and step back and say, how can we maximize all of the money that is available to us? One of the questions in the survey was, hey, did you look at the expanded day PK money? There's new money out there. Did you look at that? Absolutely. That is for new slots, new, over the 72. So you can't access that money because that's the way that the grant is written, unless you brought on brand new slots. We can't even fund the slots that we have, let alone bringing on brand new slots. So this is a deal. This is a big deal. This is something that we need to be considering when we're talking about this. Yeah, and I'm going to stop for a second because at no point in time was there a conversation, discussion, or consideration of not offering pre-K. Okay. So let's just talk a little bit about universal pre-K in New York State and what it looks like. It comes in all different forms. Pre-K, universal pre-K, otherwise known as pre-K, can be offered in different ways. A school district can provide the program, meaning the school district hires the people, they put them in the classroom, and they run the program, right? So did we look at that? Do we know what the cost is? Did we project that out? Of course, right? I was in a school district where I ran a program that was housed by the school district. In order to do that, we were only able to offer one half-day program, but that was a choice made by that district, okay? Or you can use a BOCES, or a CBO. CBO is also, BOCES is also part of the CBO. What is that? Community-based organization. So a community-based organization is your vendor. BOCES is our vendor. We currently, that's our model, we use a CBO. So we hire BOCES as our vendor right now to provide our service. So again, that is currently the best model for us to stay in, is to use the CBO at this point in all of the pieces that we have gathered. Federal and state funding is available. Federal and state money most often does not cover the cost. Many districts, again, if you go up onto the state website and you look at the allocations, there are a lot of schools that are given an allocation, but not all of those schools provide program because there's a secondary cost that does need to be picked up by the local share. So again, individual schools need to make those decisions.
So I have a question. Can I ask a question?
If you stay on topic to this.
Yes, there's 11 children that you're sure. If you had those 11 children in your program, could you maximize the benefits that the state was offering? Is that why they were penalizing you? Because you were, you didn't have what they...
It's a little bit more, so the short answer you would think is yes, but it is a little bit more complex to that because for us here in Canastota, not only do we have UPK that is funded by state and UPK that is funded by federal, we're also offering a TPK, which has a different set of rules. So those kids are counted under the TPK grant, and the grant money, I want to say this very clearly, and I don't want it to be mistaken. The grant money goes into a consortium housed by BOCES, and then offsets our cost, okay? But I can't count those kids as Canastota kids for the Canastota grant, if that makes sense, okay? So that's why all of these pieces need to be looked at independently and then kind of laid out. And I'll tell you, I've been on the phone no less than 10 times with SED, the individual that oversees UPK, because I don't have all the answers. The questions that I come up with, I call and I ask, hey, if we were going to do this, how does this impact our funding? And can we maximize this? Because there's specific rules, and again, UPK is just really unique and complex in the way that the money goes to the student and the slot, and then who came first as far as funding. So I called out to SED to make sure that I understand the answer to the question, because it's not just that easy. I wish it was. I don't know if that answered your question, but so UPK program in New York State, free to all participants. Does not matter who is providing the program. There is not a charge for UPK. Okay, so nobody pays to go and to get into a pre-K program, free of charge. Is it guaranteed? I mean, it's not guaranteed because it's indicative of how many slots a school district can support, right? So right now we have 72, we're not full. We're looking at going to 54. My specific school district just got 18 slots, first year. Just got 18 slots. So every school is very different, and again, has to do what works in their district and what can be supported, not just today, but long term. UPK is not income dependent, okay? So it doesn't matter what your income is, doesn't matter if you make $1 million, doesn't matter if you make $1, you register, and if there was a slot available, your child can get it. So I guess let me answer that question, because that's what I would be asking right now if I was sitting out in the audience. Hey, you only have 54 slots, and you open up registration, and 55 kids register. What happens? There's a lottery, okay? It's prescribed, there's a way to go about it. It can be done one of two ways. I've not been in a district that doesn't use a lottery, because that seems to be the fairest way. So once you close registration, how many registrants do you have? And you have a lottery at an open board meeting. Pick names, and those are the children that go in, and then you have a wait list. So is that a possibility? It is a possibility. That's certainly possible that that can happen. So again, my role is saying, how do we continue the program? How do we offer this program? How do we sustain this program? And it not become a burden on the local share, local cost to the taxpayers, and or at the detriment of another program. That's what my responsibility is, to bring that information to the finance committee, to the superintendent.
Well, what is the cost between the shortfall and what we're paying in taxes now for that service, if everything falls in place? What is the additional cost per thousand
On the local share,
of the local share?
I have to look at my folder. So let me come back to that, okay? All right, so pre-K services provided by a CBO, community-based organization. Any CBO. So this is a BOCES, this is a CBO, so I have it with me. I do have Tony Nelma, say that correctly, who oversees Head Start and Early Learning from Mohawk Valley Community Action. That's the organization. Programs under it, one being Head Start. Jen Carnahan, our current K-2 principal, pre-K-2 principal, pre-K-1 principal is in the back. So some of these things that we're going to talk about are programs. We're talking about financials, we're talking about programs. It doesn't matter who the vendor is. They have to, under the regulations of education law, follow certain things. They have to meet these standards for New York State pre-K learning standards. So if you're going to contract with somebody, they have to provide a curriculum and a program that meets those, outlined under education law, the commissioner's regulation, and subpart of. A developmentally appropriate program that aligns with those standards. Okay, so when we look at, we know we have to worry about costs, we certainly need to worry about program. It doesn't matter if we find a vendor that's going to charge us $10 and the program doesn't meet any of the regulations, doesn't meet our needs, then that doesn't make any sense. It has to meet those, they're written in law, they are part of education law. and what is entailed in covered benefits. One of the questions that came through on the survey was, are the teachers certified? What does their background look like? So again, I'm quoting what the regulations, okay? Not necessarily what happens, and Tony, correct me or speak if I misspeak. Again, a CBO must provide teachers that possess a bachelor's degree, a 4-year degree in early learning or a teaching license. Okay? If the school district runs UPK and is getting money from state or federal, if the school district runs it, our teacher has to be New York State certified. If a CBO, community-based organization, OCs, Mohawk Valley Community Action, Tiny Tots, whoever it is, what is the qualification? The qualification is they must have a bachelor's degree in early childhood education. Now, is the optimal to have a certified, New York State certified teacher in the classroom? Absolutely. Maybe you can speak to this, Tony, you know, what that structure looks like.
Actually, right now, the state is accepting teachers that don't even meet this requirement because there's a shortage of teachers in New York State. So there are exceptions where if you have a supervisor in the building that meets those requirements, then the teacher may have a plan of action. There's lots of caveats to it, but there is some flexibility within New York State right now because of the current staffing situation with teachers in New York State.
And that is not different than in the K-12 realm either. So there are different things, and I'm not going to profess to speak to the specifics.
Well, and we just heard it again when we met with the commissioner. That's a common topic, especially the last few years. Every area, they're looking at avenues by which non-traditional pathways for people to become certified teachers, whether it's from other types of work experience, that could help support their move into a career in education. So you're right, it's not unique. Every district, we've been fortunate. I think there are parts of the state, especially, that have struggled with staffing.
But there is a mechanism.
K-12 teachers are certified, but I think it's the only shift you're going to see in the coming years is it's going to be more user-friendly for people to pursue pathways that were non-traditional, because the shortage is not going to go away anytime soon in the state.
So you're saying that if the program is going to get a teacher with the bachelor's degree in early childhood education for the Head Start program and replacing those, that might what they said.
I want to just stop you and correct you for a second. It is not a Head Start program, it is a universal pre-K program. Universal pre-K and Head Start are two separate, distinct programs.
So where does Head Start come from?
Head Start is a program that is offered by Mohawk Valley Community Action. It's a program. So they're two separate programs.
Okay, so you're saying that there might be teachers that do not possess the degree or the certification?
Both. I'm saying by law, yeah. Right, so possess a bachelor's degree or a teaching license. But just like in this school district or any school district, there are mechanisms that allow us, if we cannot find a teacher, this isn't indicative just of pre-K.
I understand.
Right. So there could be an opportunity anywhere if we have an area that is short. That is not the goal. The plan would be to have a certified teacher in the classroom. That would be good. In the pre-K classroom. That would be good.
But it might not happen because there are certain pathways because of shortage of certain teachers.
And that is
It potentially, not to sound negative, but it could happen in any school, in any subject area is the unfortunate thing. Because there are a lot of schools that have uncertified people right now teaching any number of classes. In some cases, large numbers of teachers where it's not taught by a certified.
But that's not the problem in what's happening in the pre-K program. Now we have all certified teachers currently. They're great teachers that are gonna not get the job.
So when we're talking about,
kids in every class.
so when we're talking about quality, again, the conversation,
Certified that just a week ago with New York State.
We have 4 classrooms. All 4 classrooms have 18 students in each one.
again, I'm going to go to the information that was provided by me by the director of BOCES, the number of students that are in the classroom that are our students, Canastota students.
So a couple of points. This said, no way, the whole conversation didn't start with BOCES pre-K program is a bad program. That's not where we came from. Sometimes there's program issue that leads to a broader discussion that can impact finances, and sometimes the financial piece is the starting point. In this case, the point for this discussion was the financial piece. It wasn't, so I agree, nobody's saying, geez, this is an awful program, we need to get away from it. You looked at the financial piece and said, okay, there's a significant number there. So if we can, is there anything we can do about it, first of all? It wasn't like we just would abandon a partnership with BOCES. We partnered with BOCES on a million things across the board. And actually house BOCES programs in partnership on site right here. So the question was, is there something that is comparable with similar standards? And there's a lot of pieces to what is a standard for a program. I think we're going to talk about some things tonight, which they're different. Again, this isn't to disparage BOCES, but there are things that are different that many people would say, well, geez, that's a nice feature. So I think we want people to be able to hear some of the key pieces of what this would look like. But I just, again, want to be very clear, it is not BOCES is a bad program. That is not what it's about.
But is BOCES a better program? I guess that's what it is.
I'm sorry?
Is BOCES a better program? And that's what it is really all about.
Well, and so, again, we're going to talk about what are the pieces of it, because, I think look at, is something a comparable program? And we're going to say, we have a comparable program. When we look at things, and again, I'll defer to Tony and and people who have more expertise specifically with what their program is. But when you're talking about a partnership with a national organization that has to meet a zillion of these standards that any organization has to meet, that in some ways, for example, in terms of staffing, which we're going to get into, there's actually a higher number of adults in the classroom working with kids. I think we can make a very strong argument, and again, I'll let her speak to that we have a very strong and comparable program. But I don't know if you want to add now, or if you want to go a little further, Tracy, and then let Tony speak to that.
Yeah, we'll get, I'm just going to go quickly through these and then we'll get into the program. So again, talking about eligibility provided by a CBO, community-based organization. The eligibility is the same across the board. Same for anyone administering a pre-K program. You must be age 4 before December 1st. That is not different. That is the same. And again, free, no income requirement for a pre-K program, pre-K. And as we said, yes, we are looking at another vendor. We did put out an RFP. When we put an RFP, out an RFP, we look for, it's a request for services. We do that with a lot of things. Sometimes they come to fruition of a comparative set of data. Sometimes they don't. And we do have with us Mohawk Valley Community Action, Tony, and, again, talking about Head Start versus pre-K, they're not the same program. Similar, have similarities, but they're not the same program. They're different programs. Mohawk Valley Community Action has been administering Head Start or early Head Start programs since 1967. Currently is in several districts, does house 175 plus students with universal pre-K services, and is in additional discussions with 3 local schools. So again, when we look at the response from an RFP, these are the things that we look at first before we decide and consider if we're even going to continue the conversation. Is there stability? Have they been in the business? Is this their business? Are they in other schools? Are there references from other schools? Do they service this program? If all the answers are no, then there's nothing to compare. So once we get past that first stage of review and we find yes to these questions, then we continue on and we look at programs. So now, what is the programming? We know what our programming is with BOCES, the BOCES Universal First Aid Program, we know what that is. So we start, again, the rubric comparison between the programs. These are questions that came specifically. I'm going to speak to them. Tony is going to clarify me if I misspeak and or jump in, please. So, follows a developmentally appropriate research-based curriculum. Yes. The name of the curriculum?
We follow the creative curriculum, and it is aligned with New York State learning standards.
So again, research-based curriculum, is it the same exact curriculum that BOCES, our current vendor, uses? No, it's not. The name of the curriculum is different. Is it a different curriculum? Do they both follow New York State aligned standards? Yes. Services children that receive special education and or related services? Yes. Same thing. 3 and 4-year-olds technically are overseen and supported by the counties. School districts don't support those services. We may be getting services in our school. We may be bringing vendors into our district, but 3 and 4-year-olds, until the child is kindergarten age, so 5 or 6 depending, when they become kindergarten age, do they become ours? And are we responsible for that service? County is responsible for that service, and it's embedded into whatever programming we offer. Conducts triannual benchmarking. Yes, the program.
We use a teaching strategies goal that's an assessment that's developmentally appropriate for young children. And so children are assessed at 3 times a year, and then the data from those reports is analyzed, and we use it to make program decisions, classroom decisions, building decisions. So I guess we do assessments. Our teachers do those 3 times a year.
So again, does our current vendor do this? Yes, they do, because that is what a strong pre-K program does. So absolutely, yes, they do assessments. I don't believe that it's gold. I'm not going to misspeak. I think I know the name of the program. I have it on the tip of my tongue, but I want to say Wisconsin. I'm not certain if that is it, but yes, they do assessments. Of course they do. So again, comparing program. Parent engagement, yes. Will transportation be provided? Yes. What does that look like? Don't have that detail. We don't know what transportation is going to look like for the 2nd grader or the 5th grader or the 7th grader until we get into the summer and we plan for next year. But will transportation be provided? Yes. Are meals provided? They are provided. Is there a cafeteria? No, there's not. And you can please speak to how that fits into curriculum. Again, a little bit different of a model, meals, opposed to how it is done.
Yes, we have a nutrition manager who works for our programs. We have a dietitian. All of our menus are approved. We get our food if it's brought in, and actually we have family style, so children serve themselves. They set the tables. Nutrition is really looked at as an education component, so we can help children learn about healthy eating choices. So we know how important that is, from the time children are small and starting school. So nutrition is pretty important.
So where do they get the food? They get it from us. It comes from our cafeteria. We currently are entered into a service contract with Bob Valley Community Action to provide food for their program currently that they house at their site. Has an outdoor space for learning and play. Yes, you'll see a picture of it, but that was a question that came through multiple times. There's no outdoor space. There's no learning space. How are they going to go outside? Where are they going to? Yes, there is an outdoor space. Has an inside gym. No.
You do have an indoor gross motor room.
Gross motor, yes.
Can you explain what that is?
Sure, it's a large room, so when there's inclement weather and the children can't go outside to play, it's large enough to use parachutes or balls and hula hoops and just for children to do gross motor movement. So, and it's just right in the building of where all of our classes are, so it's a really nice asset to our facility.
Student ratio, 6 to 1. So this provider, this vendor, their model is teacher, teacher assistant, teacher aide. That's what's in the program. Okay. Our current program, again, The requirement for pre-K is every 18 students, 2 adults, teacher, teacher assistant. That is the requirement. That's what we are currently providing. Offering full day or half day. What is the offering going to be? It's a full day course. What is the time? Can't tell you that until we have all of the pieces. We can know if we're making what we're doing. Right now, we're in the recommendation phase, so I can't answer what times look like. We will have 54 slots. Library, music, how are they offered? Are they offered? What does that look like? Those certainly are conversations and comparative information that we looked at when looking at this, but there were a lot of those questions that came through. They will look differently. They will not look the same. There is not a library in the building, but if you can speak to,
Sure.
how are those offerings?
So all of our classrooms have a reading corner with books that are available to children. We also have a lending library, so we're very fortunate. We have lots of classroom materials that are developmentally appropriate. Children can take those books home. So it's like a library, even though we don't have a library space, and really engage families and help them reading to their children when they're at home.
In art.
Oh, art is incorporated into our daily activities. Our teachers do lesson plans weekly. Part of that is creative art. It's always developmentally appropriate for young children. We have art materials available, easels, and just creative materials where children can go during free play to access whatever materials they want to use to develop their own art.
The district continues to provide oversight. So we provide oversight now. We could continue to provide oversight on curriculum, on the benchmarking, on the collaboration, shared PD. The district continues to provide that with whomever the vendor is that continues seamlessly happens, so that anything that has happened with that pre-K student is known and available to the kindergarten class teachers. So there's collaboration pieces that happen, there's curriculum collaboration that happens. Again, just to clarify, this is a pre-K program, 54 slots for 4-year-olds. Several of the questions and topics, one that we look at when we do a comparison, obviously we know what our building looks like. If we're looking at a vendor that is not on our premises, what does that look like? And making sure that there are pieces in place, and some of these questions came up in the survey. What about the building? How is the building configured? What does the safety look like? Single point of entry, similar to ours. It is a single point of entry. The doors are locked. The outdoor learning space is gated and handicap accessible. Several questions came through, which again, this is a contract that we have in place when we use a vendor. Background and fingerprints are completed on any employee, again, to regulation.
All of our sites are licensed through New York State Office of Children and Family Services, so we're federally funded, so we're monitored at the federal level and the state level, and all of these are requirements to operate a child care facility in New York State, and I can say that safety and supervision is our #1 priority, I think probably for any early childhood child care setting in New York State, it's critical, so it's very important.
And all state staff are trained in CPR and first aid. So is that required?
Well, it's required. We do that. If you're not required, there needs to be someone in the classroom that is like NAT trained, that is medication administration, but we actually make sure that all of our staff receive CPR and first aid.
So again, those are the pieces that we look at when we look at the training program. Give the information on what we currently have, what has come to us through RFP, compare them to make sure, again, we're comparing programmatically similar programs. Certainly would not be responsible in any way to say, let's change program that isn't comparable. So hence, that's what gets us to the next level of recommendation and conversation. So pre-K summary again, Canastota continues to offer a pre-K service that will be available to students. 54 slots going forward. The recommendation will be at this point based on the pieces that have been put together will be to move vendors. Children age 4 no later than December 4th. The site location is in Street in Canastota, still right here. Absolutely, this is different, and it's not in our building. So, completely understandable why there's concern about that, and it is changed. It's different. It's not what people are used to. Registration date hasn't been announced. Why hasn't it been announced? We don't have a contract. So we can't announce the registration date. We don't have a contract because we're still walking through this process.
So there's a general overview there, and Tony's been able to weigh in at a few points, but hearing this and obviously knowing the program inside now, can you give us anything else that you think you want to highlight for a person, which we all, as Tracy said, we want good things for our kids, and I don't want to be attached, she doesn't be attached, the board doesn't want to be attached to something where people say, kids are in a bad position. We've outlined some of the things, like one of the things that we hear most about is we need more adults interacting with kids, or we need an adequate student-teacher ratio and those things. So those are positive things that we can see in that program. But what else do you want to say to round out the explanation
So
of
I
the
would
program?
just say, I can understand, I'm a parent as well, so I understand people's hesitation whenever there's change. I would really like to say, though, I believe Head Start's an excellent partner with any school district for universal pre-kindergarten. We, like Tracy and Mr. Stepp both said, we've been partnering with other districts. We've partnered for pre-K for over 175 children throughout Oneida County. We actually have classrooms for Oneida and Madison County, and do feel like really proud of our program. We did receive a national accreditation a year and a half ago. It's through the National Head Start Association, so we're one of 12 programs across the country that actually received that. So we really feel like we are an exemplary early childhood program, and very comprehensive. It works with the child, and most importantly, the whole family. Parents are super important part of our program. It's what Head Start was based on. So even though, yes, it's a UPK program, I think all of those pieces that Head Start really make, what makes Head Start special and unique is just added bonuses to the families in Canastota District if this were to become, come to fruition. So.
You had mentioned earlier that you were under the variance, which most educational places are under the same umbrella, but if the qualifications are being relooked at to get more people in the state. Excuse me. They commented earlier that you have a supervisor that oversees those if they don't have that. Do you have an idea of the ratio of your licensed adults versus your adults that are held by that supervisor title?
Well, if I were to look at our total program, what I can tell you is in Head Start, at least 50% of your teachers need to have a bachelor's degree. Our program exceeds that.
Bachelor's in childhood education?
Yes, and we actually exceed that in our program. We also, we have collaborations with other districts. Some of our teachers are certified, some of them aren't due to this flexibility that's being wanted right now. But so I can't.
You have the numbers for the Canastota location?
Right now, and we don't even have staff for all these classrooms. This is
We don't
a
have
new,
a partner.
yeah, this is a new partner. But we wouldn't necessarily need to have certified teachers in Canastota because we were not in a collaboration for universal pre-kindergarten. Our teachers are trained in early childhood. Many of them have either a 2-year degree in early childhood, a 4-year degree, or an advanced degree in early childhood. So our assistant teachers do as well, and then our classroom aides, we can bring them in without that degree, and then we give them so many months, and we help them acquire a CDA, which is a Child Development Accreditation. So, we're really proud of those qualifications, and so I think anybody,
So, yeah, I just want to say, so if indeed we move forward, both parties agree to enter into a contract, that would be a different setup because they have to staff the additional classrooms, right? So 9 additional staff members for those classrooms, either by sourcing other staff from other locations and or hiring. I mean, so this is not something that the organization has done because we don't have a contract.
Well, you're saying 9 because it's, and I just want to make sure I have the ratio correct. You're saying 9 additional staff because there would be 3 classrooms, a teacher assistant, and a teacher aide within each classroom?
Correct.
right, but we currently have some, we already have staff in Canastota, and some of these children, which I don't know if we really, but some of the children, what happens when you do a collaboration like this with Head Start is they're dually enrolled. So they have to meet our requirements, so they have to meet an age and income requirement, and then there are some students that will be age eligible but not income
So
eligible.
not all those 54 slots would be eligible. An open eligibility like UPK would be if we were to house the program here, or if we were to go through the BOCES.
No. So the difference is, here's the difference, and here's where the cost piece comes in that's beneficial to us. We are leveraging Head Start federal money. So we're leveraging, we get to dual enroll our children. If we have a child that is eligible for Head Start funding, they get enrolled, Head Start funding comes through, that's an offset of our cost. We enroll that as a Canastota PK, and they go into our grant pool.
So how do you know that child's going to get picked by the lottery if it's a lottery system?
No, the lottery system.
So you could get a lottery system of all UPK kids and get no funding from the dual enrollment?
Potentially 47% of our families are direct certified. Direct certified, which has provided us the CDP status. We have community eligibility status in the district where all students are free based on our 47% of our jobs. I don't know who qualifies for registration.
So with this program, though, to make sure everybody's understanding this, it's not income dependent. In other words, getting into the program is not, do you meet income requirements? Where the income, the individual student's family income would come into play is the money that comes back, or well, would come to Head Start, and
We're
that.
funded to serve children who meet not only your age eligibility, but our income eligibility.
So in other words, the risk isn't the parent. It's not, okay, you don't meet this standard, you can't go into the program. Where the impact would be is how does it impact the cost that ultimately that the district is passed on to the district.
If you have all students that don't meet that income qualification,
You don't have
then we get
to.
no better funding from it.
You don't have to,
We
so,
don't leverage.
you don't
we
have all of
leverage
it.
Head Start funding.
Right.
We get our federal funding. We get our state dual funding. We wouldn't get the dual funding.
So
So
is-
now we can maximize that $508,000 that we can't maximize right now from the beginning of this election.
Is there a difference in eligibility between the two programs, between BOCES and Head Start?
So between BOCES and Head Start, we are contracting with BOCES to provide a pre-K service, different than a Head Start
The
program.
BOCES pre-K service, is there a difference in eligibility between the two programs?
No, pre-K, the eligibility is the same. You must be 4 vendors by December 1st.
And there's no income?
There is no income. Does not matter who our vendor is. If we are using federal and state money to support a pre-K service, there is no income eligibility.
So both of these are heterogeneous programs, so they have a mix of children
That is correct.
from everywhere.
That is correct.
Could you tell me, or tell us, the districts that you currently serve?
Yes, we're currently serving in Utica, the city of Utica, the city of
Utica,
Yes.
Utica who?
Utica School District.
Uh-huh.
And we serve 140, collaborate for 140 students in the city of Utica for universal pre-kindergarten and 36 students in Rome.
So you have two schools.
Both city schools, right?
And then we have 15 sites throughout the 3 counties, but those are the 2 cities, districts that we collaborate for. Correct.
How many students is Head Start currently servicing, and how many does the building hold so that we can understand the actual reduction of services reported with initiatives?
So right now, we currently have 1 classroom operating in Canastota. We have space in our building for 4 classrooms, so we could go up to 72 children.
Okay, so we would still be able to maintain, well,
We would contract for 54 of those slots.
so 54 would be UPK, but there would still be a classroom committed to Head Start.
We'd like
So
to-
that was still
What we'd
72.
like to do is have a Head Start available classroom for children who are 3 years old, who would still need services and meet our eligibility, the age and income eligibility.
And those would still be the Smith Leaper funds or whatever those are from the federal level for Head Start?
It's often, it is a Head Start fund.
She's like there, I literally remember like when me and my friend would ask our teacher for.
54 universal pre-K. 54.
Thank you.
I have another question. I understand the Head Start program, you guys are administering the UPK program. You would rather find.
So there would be, it's really meeting the requirements of the Head Start program and the universal pre-kindergarten. Some because there are federal regulations, things we need to do in order to operate a Head Start program. It only enhances services, and that's why I think we've been a great partner for the districts we work with, because the districts, we can do a lot. Our teachers make 2 home visits a year if the family would like.
Exactly what I wanted to ask about the home visits. Would that apply to the UPK students also? I think
If the family wanted, then that's absolutely something that could be, we could certainly talk about, but those are like
So it's
details
kind of
that.
an added benefit, right?
Yeah.
So it's that added benefit. Is it required for pre-K? It's not required. But would it be available? So the partnership and the collaboration gives us that added benefit. So that's that other thing that we look at when we look at a type of change like this. Are there additional benefits that we would get that we don't normally have yet? So the answer would be yes, if a family wants.
just to live off of that, are there other additional benefits that the UPK kids would get that Head Start provide that they wouldn't normally get in the current existing program?
Yeah, and I'm not sure about all of what they currently get in their existing program, but I had mentioned before, we have an education component, but then we also have a health component. So we have health managers, and we have a nutrition manager. The health managers help families find medical and dental homes, make sure their children have all their immunizations ready for kindergarten if they're struggling with finding a provider. We have a family services component, which links families with resources in their community if they're looking for, maybe looking for a new job, or they want to go back to school, or they want to find a safer residence, whatever. We have staff that can help families with that. We have a special services component. 10% of all the children Head Start enrolls have to have a documented disability. So we have a special services manager who helps families walk through that process of having a child screened, go through the assessment process, and then hopefully go to committee and be able to get the services they need. So that's a resource for families who have a child with a disability or suspected disability. We also have an early childhood behavior specialist. She is a person who goes out into classrooms and supports staff with children who might be exhibiting behaviors that are unsafe or struggling with maybe some social emotional things. We also have 2 mental health consultants who don't provide therapy, but they come in and they'll do observations and they'll make mental health referrals for the children or adults if always with parent permission, if that's something that a parent or child might benefit from. So it's very comprehensive, but all of those things would be available to anybody in the district if they were enrolled.
What about speech or OT or PT?
We don't have those providers, but what we do is just like the school district, we help each family go through committee. Once that child has an IEP, sometimes the providers come into our classrooms and provide services there, but we help make sure that we try our best to help get those services through committee. Obviously, there's a shortage of, I think, a lot of providers right now, but certainly that's a part of what our special services office does.
So just to clarify, or make things a little bit more comprehensive, for 3 and 4-year-olds through special education needs and 5-year-olds if they haven't gotten to kindergarten age yet. So we have our individual, our staff, our director and or psychologists sit at those meetings and serve as the liaison between the county and the providers. So we do part of that linkage, right? So we do that now, we would do that then. I think some of the things that Tony is saying and referring to, and I don't want to be remiss, there are many of those things that are also incorporated as part of BOCE service as a provider. Again, the way that we pay for those things are a little bit different. So which is the cost structure and how that works. So
Wasn't the county paid for CPSC services?
for
Not the
CPS.
school district?
Yes, okay, yes. We have a chair that chairs the meetings. School districts chair the meetings. Yes.
I have a question about the home visits. Is the classroom teacher the one who comes and does the home visits?
The teacher makes 2 home visits a year. In the beginning of the year, and our staff work 11 months a year, so that our staff come back in the month of August, contact families, set their classrooms up. They have a lot of professional development over the month of August. That's when they typically make the first visit with the family to find out about the child, just get to know one another, to know the child. And then there's a second home visit that typically happens in the spring. Parents are really involved with helping to set goals for their child. Teachers will share activities they're doing in the classroom and then provide the parents with things they can be doing in the home to support learning. It's all about school readiness, helping those children get ready for kindergarten. And then there's family support specialists who can make as many as home visits as a family is interested in having those. It's really individual, really based on the needs of the family.
Is there a reason that this program can't operate in Peter's? Sorry? Is there a reason that this program can't be housed in Peter's?
I'm going to let the superintendent answer that. So the question is there a reason why it can't be housed in Peterborough? So is there a reason why we can't have a vendor change and still house the program in Peterborough? I think which leads to part of the next conversation.
Right, which we can.
Again, bigger picture.
Yep.
So, answer, please. That's a good question.
Before
Well,
you
there's
get to that, sorry, I just have a question about the 3-year-old program. Are you getting rid of that? The 3-year-old half-day program?
That is the conversations that we would not be offering.
Yeah, okay, I just wanted.
That is literally so we still have a contract with BOCES for 24, 25, or is that year by year?
It's year by year.
So at the end of this year, 2024 is the over.
Yes, we annually review contracts with them.
And I have one question for you. You indicated in the beginning of your presentation that you asked for 200 plus funding and you got 60 in return. And why is that? That's less than 50%.
So again.
And I also understand you mentioned it's based on first come, first served.
Well, of funding.
Okay.
Not of students, of funding.
Right.
So, of funding, so our students, so in, I can say this correctly off the top of my head, we have 35 students that are attached to state funding. So we get our funding, 35 students there. Portion of our funding, again, comes through the collaboration through the TPK consortium that are identified as the consortium students, and then the funding comes back to us as a reduced cost of that particular funding. Okay, so those students we don't get to count. And then I have 8 students left out of our 61, 8 students that are ours alone that are in the federal. So when I filled out the federal money, assuming that we were able to count those students that were in consortium and federal. The answer was no.
Is there a way to appeal that decision? Was that?
Absolutely, advocation is powerful. So we can't appeal it, no. We can't appeal it. That's the way that it is. But what I will say is that the one house budget that just came out, so the Senate and the state have just put out their one-house budget. I'll go on a little short, teeny tiny soapbox. So the governor put out her budget. We don't have a state budget yet. April 1st is rolling around. The state and the assembly put out their one-house budget. In that budget, they both are supporting the streamlining and the change of funding mechanism for BPA. So that it kind of all monies come under one umbrella, and they have these buckets that you have to kids here that you can convert to all day if they were in state money, and then you can carry some of them over to federal, and they can be half day or full day. But right, so it's part of the House's legislative play, if you will, to make that change. So the House and the Assembly have that as part of their budget to go forward, which would be very beneficial to all districts if we were able to pool all of that money and kind of start over.
On the funding topic, is Head Start funded through the Farm Bill? They don't receive any funds from the Farm Bill? Okay.
No question out there, and I'm guessing we know, but it's just a shot. Is there any way that you can explain to us kind of a rough estimate of the per child? I'm guessing it's no, based on the 3 buckets you just explained, but the per child comparison, this program is $5 for a 4-year-old, this program is $6 for a 4-year-old. Is there anything that you can do to understand, to make it a little more understandable?
So I'll say this, again, in this, I think when we put the side-by-side comparison, a session cost for preschool, and it's different, the way that the organizations give you information. So our current structure, I mean, how detailed do you want me to get into this topic right at the moment?
Well, how about partway?
Okay.
If you want to get a little, no, we want to be able to answer questions. We don't want to put people to sleep, and that's why we, but I think we'd like to give you a reasonable amount of detail if we can when you're here. And we'll have other sessions too to follow up if you want to have, additional smaller sessions.
Are you going to let representatives from BOCES come and speak as to what they offer and that they've been in the district for 30 years?
It kind of seems like their decision was
So BOCES, well, as we said, we've looked at the cost of the program, so we're making a recommendation with a vendor. Like we don't do that with vendors for any number of things. I mean, how many vendors would we work with in the course of working in the $30+ million operation? So that happens all the time. And I also want to say, we still consider that there's not some kind of turf war with BOCES. I want to be completely clear. We partner with BOCES. We work with BOCES people all the time. And actually, we brought a lot of programs on site. BOCES themselves understands that sometimes districts, sometimes the partnership going through BOCES makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't. And I'm not going to, I've had that conversation with numerous BOCES superintendents over the years. They understand that. So this isn't a matter of bad blood. It's not a matter of we don't like the people who are working in the program. I think Tony is interested in talking to people probably. I'm not going to speak for her, but we need good people to be working with our kids. It is not anything about that. But no, we're not going to, we're not having multiple presentations as we wouldn't do for any number of things. We understand this is a topic that's close to a lot of people's hearts. We get it. But again, in a $30+ million operation, there are a lot of things that strike a nerve with a lot of different people. And that's going back to the original point of, we have particular roles that we have to do. Is it informed by feedback from the school community? Of course it is. But if you listen to Tara,
yeah,
was that a question? I thought there was a question. If you listen to the detail that Tracy went through, right, that's informed by hours and hours and hours of conversations and research, and that, you don't replace hours and hours of knowing that to that detailed level and all those conversations by by a few minutes of conversation or a short presentation. That's what our role is. That's what we're charged with doing every day to represent the interests of the district. It'd be hard pressed for us, knowing that we've gone through this level of detail, to say that when it's tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars at stake, that we're not going to strongly consider a program of the quality and credibility that was described tonight. So I think that's a reasonable thing. We think that objectively, and a lot of times the lens, we also have to say, what is a reasonable thing? If we're not directly involved, right, with some of these discussions, what would an objective person who's looking at it saying, is this a reasonable proposal? We feel it is a reasonable proposal. And again, we also realize that people are close to the situation. And we realize that sometimes changing something makes for a little bit of a rough go. But I think as we continue to lay out some of the, continue to answer these questions, which we will follow up with our Q&A document that will outline things we've talked about, questions that have come in. We'll continue to look at the questions that come into us and continue with that document so that people can, and of course we are encouraging people to come in and talk to us directly with the dates and times that we're going to put up here in the next presentation. Yeah.
The question was if BOCES representative was going to be able to come into one of the next discussion sessions that you said that we would have, to be able to be like, hey, we provide this, so the audience can kind of gauge where we're at versus where we're possibly going.
I mean, those presentations, we don't keep anybody out of those. We beg people to come to hear information when we offer these types of sessions. So, anybody who wants to attend those sessions is welcome to. We'd much rather have the conversation be around those types of things where people can talk from a level of understanding and having that background information to share with people. The struggle usually is when there's pieces of information and there's bad information that's floating around. So we'd love for anybody to be a part of that. Those are open.
I'm rather
If you
curious
started out by
as
saying that this was.
I'm sorry, we got to. I'm sorry.
I don't hear, so.
Yeah, you're fine. We'll get right to you, okay? We just had a question.
You started out by saying this evening that this was about the kids and that this wasn't strictly a financial concern. And then we went into the presentation where we addressed issue, you call it issue identification. And the only thing we've heard right now is financial. In my mind, I'm wondering, if it's not just a financial concern and this is about the kids, we're hearing just financial. Are there issues like space for classrooms or teacher staffing issues? Or what are these other issues if it's not just financial?
Well, I think we said we're looking at the financial piece and the program piece, program impact. And so what we're saying is there's a definite financial shortfall on the one side, and then we're saying we're looking at comparability of program. And we're at the point where we're saying that they're comparable programs for a significantly different cost.
So
What is that cost difference? So BOCES
No, it's
costs
both.
too much?
It's both. It's a program analysis of what. In other words, we're not saying there's an issue with the BOCES program, but we're saying if there's a comparable program at a significantly lesser cost, then that's where the decision.
My question to you is, do we currently have other issues such as space for housing the classrooms, or staffing concerns, or enrollment concerns beyond the 54 or 72? Are there any other things that we need to be made aware of that is included with looking at all of these concerns that we started out this presentation?
Well, we're going to talk about, as we continue, we're going to talk about, when we talk about space and what would space be used for, we'll get into that as well. I mean, we can't.
That goes to my
concern
question.
right now for pre-K space.
I'm sorry.
Which came
She's asking
first?
about the existing program, are there any issues?
Are there
with the
concerns right
existing
now about the
program?
existing classes? Space for the existing classes?
Well, so again, let me talk about bigger picture reconfiguration concept. I'm trying to answer your question. I'm saying that we need to,
I'm not asking about that, I'm asking about the current program.
would we have,
Doubled up at all?
would we have space in the district to be able to have a pre-K cat? Well, yeah, I mean, we'd have any number of spaces, but it goes to how is the district
Right now,
configured?
this year, are we doubled up in classrooms? Do we
No.
have students being taught in the hallways?
No, we never said we didn't have room to
I'm
have,
asking you, I
to
didn't
have
say you said
kids.
it, I'm asking, is that currently happening?
No, we don't, no.
Thank you.
No, we could house everything that we need to. So part of what we're going to talk about is what would the space look like if this were an option?
I think you had something to say on that.
So,
Well, I was asking which came first, the defiguration or the shortfall, or did it go together?
well, they have to sort of, I mean, they're.
You know, because Peterborough
Yeah.
Street for the elementary with
Yep.
stairs and everything, I understand.
Yep. So,
But I also think there's something to be said for have them housed in the school, if it's possible, to be where they're going to be going to school instead of out.
So-
And especially with the curriculum flow from kindergarten, I mean pre-K to kindergarten.
mhm.
Sorry,
So-
we can't hear back here.
Yeah.
Could you summarize what she's saying, because we can't hear back here?
She just said, is there a reason why they can't, they're in a school, so keep them in a school if she can. Like, why not keep them in a school?
Because the transition is easier to go from.
Exactly.
So we're going to talk a little bit about transitions and then how all of this fits together, because obviously the configuration of the district, obviously the big picture, right? And then we're talking about the specific pre-K program. And there have been things floating around for a while, long before this was a point that was brought out publicly. Heard all kinds of things, and a lot of things were just not true. But, you know, that it was, we're moving kids next to the high school, pre-K to the high school, and we're moving them next. I mean, I've heard every version of things that you'd read out there, all kinds of things that some of which had never even been mentioned or talked about, let alone seriously discussed.
So was that not true, a move to Roberts Elementary for the pre-K program? Was that not a true? Was a move to Robert Street for the pre-K program? I heard that earlier in the year. Was that not a true iteration of one of our options?
So we didn't get, so let me get to the reconfiguration picture, and then I think it's going to be apparent where
John?
everything fits in. Yeah.
Before we go on, I would like to say something. I am president of the school board, but long before I was president of the school board, when I first came here, and before I came here, a long time ago, 50-plus years ago, I taught Head Start. And maybe I should precede that with the fact that since I've been here, I have grandchildren who are in Chittenango, and we talk about transitions and we talk about going from school to school. Their pre-K3 program, part of it was in Bridgeport. So my grandson had to go from Bridgeport, and he went to Bolivar for the 4 programs. Kids make that change, and certainly I think we can all kids can make those changes very quickly. But let's go back to the fact of 50-plus years ago when I came to this district. I came as a 6th grade teacher, but early on, I was with Maria Galton and Head Start. I'm going to tell you, and I talked to Maria Strong early on in this discussion, if this was not what I thought was a super opportunity to be able to partner with Head Start and to go to that building where there are just 2 programs, 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, I wouldn't be up here and I wouldn't be supporting of this. And I'm also going to tell you that when I first came here, I was at Peterborough Street with 5th and 6th graders. To me, that was the most outstanding experience of my life because, again, we were, in a sense, isolated. I think these kids will thrive at the Head Start program. And I truly, truly believe it. And I told Maria at the time, and I couldn't give her any details, but I said to her at the time, you know what? I think that this is going to be the super opportunity, and I hope that you all embrace it. And certainly as an educator, I would not be up here and supporting this if I didn't believe in it. And I'm a person who loves Peterborough Street, so don't get me wrong there, because love Peterborough Street. I never wanted, there was a move, oh yeah, we want another, we want a big elementary school. I didn't want Peterborough Street to disappear. North Broad apparently is disappearing at Oneida. It's too bad. And I don't want Peterborough Street to disappear. And I think when you look at the reorganization and you look at where people are going to be, if you look at it with an open mind, I think your kids are going to be, if your kids are going to pre-K, I think your kids are going to be thrilled. And I'm telling you, if I had grandchildren in this district now, I would be thrilled for them going. And that is my honest, personal opinion. Not a board president opinion, but a personal opinion.
Debbie, does Chittenango have Head Start program?
Mary Ellen, I don't know that. I know that they have, their pre-K programs, and I know that, and I believe they have two, because I think they have one at Bridgeport and then they have one at Bolivar. Well, he didn't, he had to go to Bridgeport. And by the way, as a 3-year-old, we had to transport. So, I think we have the best of the best, and I would like our programs to be fully enrolled. And I mean, this year we had those spots and we were paying for empty spots. I just think, and again, I wouldn't be up here, I wouldn't be promoting it unless I truly, truly believed in it. And I think you all, I think you'll be thrilled. I really, really do.
Don't get 54 kids to enroll.
I can't hear you, Maria.
What happens if we don't get all those 54 slots filled? Then what happens to our funding?
So, yeah,
It does.
I'll answer this.
Well, I think we're in the same spot, then you're looking at enrollment trends, like you have.
Looking forward, like if we can't fill 54 spots, do we need to look forward? Certainly, we can lock it from here, but then in the following year, do we need to look at that again if we're only getting 32 kids or 34 kids?
But our full day pre-K just started 2 years ago, when my daughter started in pre-K, and they were full. They were turning down kids. So it's only been 2 years since then. So this past year has been 1 year that we haven't been able to fill the full 72 slots.
All 4 rooms
And now
have
all of a
18
sudden we want to
kids.
go and cut even more slots?
All 4 rooms have 18 kids.
All 4 rooms have 18 kids.
Yes.
That is not the information that was provided to me from the director multiple times.
So we don't know how many kids are in our Canastota classrooms right now?
Well, I can go on to
We know what our cost impact, and that was certainly what they confirmed for us.
I personally, I will listen to everything, all the presentations, but I would be concerned to send my child, a 4-year-old, across the street from a vape
Well,
shop.
Mrs. Carnahan can speak to that then.
I love Mrs.
As
Carnahan.
far as numbers, because that's certainly a conversation that she'd be having with Mrs. Leone when we're looking at that. Obviously, we cross-reference those documents, so at every piece of information we've had, it's that, and that's what the cost factor has been relating to. So is that not correct?
I really have students in TPK right now.
We have TPK, pre-K students at Peterborough Street, 60 of which are 4-year-olds and 12 of which are 3-year-olds. And then Tracy gets into the nitty-gritty of who counts for who, as far as funding and all of that goes. But we do have 18 children in 4 different sections.
Inclusive
I can
of
attest that my
TPK.
3-year-old has grown leaps and bounds with a half-day program. I would be fully concerned for her to just go to a 4-year program and cut out 3 years altogether. She has grown so much. So to cut out 3-year-olds, I think, is disheartening for this district.
That is very sad.
I agree, my daughter's on the parents are already here.
So, okay, to go back to the question that we had about where does everything fit in when we're looking at space, because in the district. Flashback. So this was the model, and this is not news at this point. A lot of people have been talking about it. This was talked about with our staff, and this information has been floating around.
2 Robert Streets up there.
So that's that one's obviously south. So south side, the configuration recommendation was K2 to use that space for the K2. South side would move to a 3-4. Robert Street would become a 5-8 middle school, and then the high school would be 9-12. So again, going to the question of why would you look at or consider a configuration change, big picture in the district? Well, one of the reasons is that there's great benefit to creating a middle school model for the district. Why? Because we know, based now on years of research and not by us, by the educational community, that there are very unique social, emotional, behavioral factors that go into those students at that critical age group. And really, we're talking around that 10 to 14-year age range. And so we know, for example, that that area, that time in the student's development represents a second major shift in their development. There's a lot going on there. Along with that early phase of development in the younger years, this 10 to 14-year age is critical, and we've understood it's more and more critical as time has gone on. We know that to be true. And we'll get a little bit more into that in a minute. This isn't a new concept. When we look at what other people are doing, actually we're surrounded by many schools who adopted that model. It's not necessarily unique, but many of our neighbors have used that to address some of their academic needs in the district. Another reason, another thing that we're looking at, we talk about transition, right? And we talked about, for example, one of the concerns, ironically, that was coming back to us, even though it wasn't a part of the proposal, was we can't have 4-year-olds, for example, in this building. That was one of the biggest things that we were hearing about regularly. As was stated earlier, one of the great benefits to this is that students, those young students, they really do have an environment that's tailor-made for kids of that age. From the facilities to the limited, you're not dealing with, you don't even have the influence of kindergartners, let alone high school kids, which has been widely speculated at one point. So it is tailor-made to kids of that age group to get them off to a good start. So when we enter into what is the K-12 continuum of our program, this allows, for example, a student now who's first grade where they can stay another year in Peterborough before they would move on. Same thing for a third grader, well, they have an additional year in Southside. So the overwhelming feedback, and not just over years in talking to people, is usually people are more upset if the child is being fast-forwarded into an environment that they're not necessarily ready for. This is a way of really accommodating many of the wishes of people, is that, if we could keep them in elementary environment for an additional year. So this does this before they make the transition over to this complex by another year. The other issue, which comes up a lot, is the age range in this complex. Some of the questions we got were, well, are we concerned about putting 5th through 8th graders together in a building? I would counter that with, there's a lot of concerns of putting a 7th grader, we have an immature 7th grader with a mature senior. It is a massive age range. And so we're taking all that into account. Why we like the 5-8 model, as a lot of districts do, is that you're catching kids that are in that second phase of overall development, and you tailor a program. You're not just changing the name or creating an artificial barrier in a building. You're actually tailoring a whole program to meet the specific needs of kids at that time. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I had the question, which is still a good question. We talk about, is it good for kids, this type of reconfiguration? But then the real issue, just like we talk about money, we talk about all of it. We have to see the whole picture. Program impact on kids, financial piece. Some people said, well, what about the accountability piece? Because all public schools are judged, and we know a few years ago we were on a state list for improvement. What is the implication? Is this somehow detrimental for us if we were to move to this type of configuration. So we talked to, in this case, some of you might know who I'm talking about, Amy Cones from BOCES Regional, really probably the guru, the go-to person as far as understanding state accountability criteria, knows it inside and out. Well, what does this do to us? And is there something we should be aware of, because we don't want to make a move, recommend a move, and then find out we've done something that puts our school in a tough spot. Her words, not mine, her words were this configuration that we're recommending, probably the best recommendation to deal with the state accountability system. Why? There are a lot of good things that our high school teachers and high school kids are working on, trying to do. They're not going to get some of the recognition that maybe in some cases they well deserve because of the way that students are packaged together, or the building is packaged together 7 through 12. Why? She can explain it in great detail, but to make a long story short, the issue has to do with attendance rates, participation rates, and various components of their program. Our high school, unlike some neighbors who have traditional high school settings, our staff isn't getting the recognition, our kids aren't getting the recognition that in some cases would be beneficial to them from an accountability standpoint. Another point, 7th and 8th grade is a prime area that we're looking at. It's a prime area when we dig, again, hours of digging very deeply into our student performance levels. I will tell you, as somebody who has worked in that age grade for many years, we were concerned about the path we were on. We said that we don't want to just paint a picture that everything's rosy. We knew that there were concerns at that level, right as kids at that critical time when they were getting ready to come into high school. Academically, socially, emotionally, interaction with peers and bullying and all those kinds of things that play into their readiness to be able to tackle the challenges of what lies ahead. It is helpful for that 5-8 configuration when the state views how districts are meeting those standards because it's apples and oranges in 7th and 8th grade and 9 through 12, right? They're just totally different things, different standards. They take different assessments. That's one piece of it. High school kids are taking Regents exams, right? Everybody has to take those. And so it's apples and oranges. So from an accountability standpoint, it makes sense to pair them because it's not mixing apples and oranges. It's a smoother way to combine grade levels from an accountability standpoint. Right now, one of the things that she immediately picked up on, Southside, for example, small building anyways with only 2 grades in it. Well, they're really measured. Their accountability really falls to 3rd grade because 2nd grade isn't assessed. And so one of the points she immediately picked up on was this allows Southside to be fully represented. It's a more accurate indication if we're really wanting to see how we're doing. It's a more accurate indication of how those students are performing because under this model, 3rd and 4th in that nice small setting, early elementary school still, those grades are packaged together before they go off to the middle school. So there's some of the things. Again, we noticed we didn't lead with this because, our biggest concern was how is it going to help the kids? And then we wanted to know, is there something detrimental that we should know about if we configure it differently? And the answer to that was no, it's not detrimental to the accountability piece. So how does it help, again, further, how does it help kids? Let's talk first academically. We'll go through a couple of different pieces of the puzzle. Academically, a core piece of middle school model, middle school concept, is that you have flexible periods of time, right? So to most effectively help a student, you have to move away from some of these traditional blocks. Like when I went to school, okay, you sit in a class for 40 or 42 or 45 minutes, go to the next class. there needs to be some way, a way of trying to more creatively help kids of that age group. If you talk to, for example, an English teacher in 7th or 8th grade, they're going to tell you, we struggle with the amount of time we have to teach the lessons that we want to teach in those traditional blocks. So we're trying to fit a traditional model into a more evolved academic program, or a more evolved way of learning. So for example, one of the things that we'd really want to look at is, for some areas that we know are a priority area, how do we building foundational skills, how do we help kids by structuring our instructional time a little bit differently and getting them more time on a daily basis in math or in ELA, for example. We also need flexibility to meet where, the needs of where kids are, because depending on where they are in their development, you have some kids who maybe are lagging a little bit behind, and they'll, hopefully we'll get them there eventually, but kids are at different phases. Some kids need additional intervention, need additional help. The model that we're proposing allows us to have additional flexibility, points in the day where we can access kids who need extra help. So we can efficiently get to those kids who really would benefit from that help. What about the kids who would benefit from additional challenge? Right? Picture that kid who's starving for challenges, wants real world tasks, maybe is able to take on some things and really take the things that they learn on a daily basis and do something beyond. Perfect way to do this. I'd used a similar model for years, never saw as much enthusiasm or growth in those kids because it was meeting the needs that they have to be challenged. So the key is flexibility, right? Because every kid is different. That's one thing I've learned in 30 years of either being a coach or a teacher or a principal or a superintendent. Every kid is different, and different things will capture the attention or the enthusiasm or the interest of a student. So that's what we're trying to get at. So these are key components of the educational piece. Now we pivot to social and emotional needs. A key piece of the middle school concept is that you have time to address the things that for example, in the case of bullying, makes things difficult for kids. How can they concentrate on something like learning math if their mind is somewhere else because a peer, for example, is giving them a hard time, or they're worried about what's going to happen? So, now, is there a magic way of, is this a magic bullet that fixes everything? Of course not. But it's a vehicle in which we can do things creatively. For example, in this model, you're not taking away from a core instructional class to be able to provide these important anti-bullying types of activities, for example. It's built into the schedule to be able to access kids for that reason. Social emotional learning, we hear a ton about that in recent years. That's not going away. That's a need that a lot of kids have who are struggling. And you look at some of these kids and they're really struggling. And look for ways that you can break through and help them. And this, again, is intentionally infused into the schedule. This is a part of what a middle school is. Again, not just the name on the doorway. Teaming is essential to the middle school concept. So how we put our teachers in a position to be able to coordinate with each other. So the importance of intentionally putting them, core groups of teachers from different disciplines, to be able to work together as a team and plan together collectively. And then, of course, there are things that highly effective middle schools have used for a number of years that we know are tried and true, that you can do team building, goal setting type of things that's ongoing. We want to have things that are for the long haul, not just quick flashy presentation and then it goes away. We want something that we can build on and help kids throughout not only the year but in subsequent years. So we talk about space and what would that space look like? Well, there are only a certain number of pieces of the puzzle where you have flexibility. In our K-12 program, they're going to be in our facilities. We're going back to the pre-K question. Could we have pre-K in our district? Yeah, we have space for pre-K in our district. But one of the questions, there are variations of this question on the survey. Because some people said, well, why don't are we looking at another capital project? Are we expanding one of our buildings? Can we expand? Should we expand? That kind of thing. So, number of factors involved with that. Again, it comes to a big piece of it is money. Over the years, for example, several times since I've been a superintendent, I've looked at, for example, do we add a wing to a building, or can you add a gymnasium or whatever? Tracy can speak very intelligently to this topic, but the bottom line is this: state ed is very difficult. I would say near impossible to get some of those things done without jeopardizing your aid. So a district like us, absolutely dependent on aid. We are a high aid district. We generate a lot of return for the dollars spent that come back to us. We've talked about that a lot in all of our capital projects. It's the way we've been able to do our recent project. But you can't just add to the footprint of the district and still realize the same level of aid that we got, for example, in our last project. There are only very limited ways that you can do that. So when we weigh the options, we say, could we add on, to a building? Sure, we could add on. It would be a tremendous cost to the district. And we know that prior to me being here, I know years ago there was a big project that we create another entire different facility, right? As we learned from that experience, that was a difficult prospect and it wasn't well received. That's a difficult task to just say we're moving out of this place and we're going to go into another place. So as time's gone on, we've had more things that have come into our program to help students. For example, we had Connected Community Schools that came in. Been a great asset. Giving away tons and tons of food, connecting families with resources, connecting the dots to help them. They need space. And for those of you who come into our facilities, they have space. They could definitely use more given the amount of work and the way that their work is expanded. Satellite Mental Health Office through the county. By the way, so I'll comment on it briefly here, but because people have been asking that question. When's it coming? When's it coming? It's coming as soon as everything can be ironed out. We've given the go-ahead. It's just we're working through the contractual pieces, which is a lawyer piece, So there is no holdup on our end. We've sort of said let's get it going as soon as we can. So we're going to have very soon, and we'll update the community as soon as its date's nailed down. Going to have that space, and so we can use that. Some of our space for that purpose to help students. Another thing that's been a topic of conversation, again, we're not there with the final pieces of it yet, but I can be more specific soon, SROs, right? So the bigger concept of SROs, and I'm not talking about, we're not talking about individuals, we're talking about programs, big picture. District, and what you're going to see in our budget proposal, and we're confident that a piece of the proposal is going to be that we'll be able to leverage funding so that at a similar cost to what we're experiencing now, we can have 2 resource officers in the district. Right, so that's great because it's cost effective, it's service, it's protection, it's safety for our students. There also needs to be a hub for that because I will also say there's going to be greatly expanded levels of service that those types of people would provide. So those are just a few of the things. The other thing, student intervention. Look at when our guidance counselors, for example, are meeting with small groups or parents or families. So there's space that we can use in our district. We know that. Does it make sense to go to the taxpayers and let's build another building? No. In this case, increasing the footprint, incredibly costly. Is there a way that we can leverage our space and our money and keep programs local? Yeah. So we have a nationally certified credible program partner who has space in their facility right in the village. It doesn't require us to build a new facility that's already designed for kids of that age. Right down the road from us, easy access. We partner with them all the time anyways, with food, with transportation. That's not a heavy lift for us. We're not building a new building. It's a way of essentially adding our footprint without adding our footprint in terms of cost. Keeping the program local, keeping those kids in a space that isn't, not only, again, you don't have high school kids, you don't have kindergartners there. It's a space specifically tailored to them. So that was the idea, that's how we'd use the space with those types of things that I described. The other thing I didn't mention was in our intervention programs. Those programs need space, and so they can differentiate their work. So all of those things in totality would allow us to, we'd be able to use that space effectively, keep our 4-year-olds right here in town, connected to us with a great partnership with a local organization who's interested in working with us. We need to look at costs. It's not insignificant. And if we go down the line and say, every program, anything that we do, anything that we offer, if anybody could microanalyze it, we do it all the time because that's our job. We look at 1 million pieces of the puzzle, right? So you could do that with everything, and if the answer is we're going to not say that that's significant, that if it's something that we're going to say is a comparable service for tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars different, we think that that's a good recommendation. And if we did that with every area of our operation and said we're going to go to the higher, even though we sincerely believe that it's a comparable program, we'd be having double-digit tax increases on an annual basis. So that's sort of the full overview. But there were some specific questions we want to address. Good questions, right? So I like this question because I certainly like sports, right? Will this impede our ability to participate in sports, or does this have some kind of effect on what is modified or JV or varsity? It has no effect on sports. It has no effect on sports. Our school teams start in 7th grade. That's when students can initially be participating on a school team, and there won't be any impact on that. So not a problem there. We already talked about that there is not a plan for facilities expansion. We have our hands full now with our current renovation to our facility. There's not any bigger picture plan to expand the footprint of the district. Music was something that we needed to talk about. In fact, just having a conversation, I was walking down the hall with a couple of the music teachers, and we're continuing the conversation. We're in March now. I told them, I said, obviously, that's a priority. We don't want to damage, for example, our access to our music program at those grades. And so we're going to be working on what does that look like for next year so that we can continue those types of experiences for our kids. After school activities, the same thing. If anything, we want to broaden that. I think look forward to discussions with families and staff with what are the things that people really want, what are the activities that kids really benefit from. And so that we'll continue to offer. Let me get back. Another good question. What does that mean? Does 4th grade go on the schedule, bus schedule that the 4th graders go on this year, or would they be like what K3 is now? So they would, because if they were physically in Southside, 4th graders would really essentially become a K4 bus route. K4 would be on that later bus run in the morning, for example. We talked about these already, so I don't want to beat that to death, but the age range, we got questions about the age range and students in grades 5 through 8. Again, we'll say that there's research that suggests that, substantial research that suggests those are precisely the ages that should be bound together to be able to address those needs at that timeline. And it also lessens the span of students in this building. And certainly takes away from, as far as the high school, okay, there's a big difference. Anybody who's had them, a couple of kids knows a big world of difference between a 7th grader and a 9th grader, and we view that as a positive.
I just have a question about the transportation.
Yep.
So adding 4th grade into it, what kind of issues are we gonna run into adding a whole nother grade level if we're still transporting pre-K? You're adding like a whole another 100 kids onto the bus at the same time.
So and this is something we've talked extensively to Cindy Clark about, obviously. I don't know if you want to talk more specifically about Cindy's feedback.
Yeah, I mean, at the preliminary, so I'll say this, Mrs. Clark absolutely thinks that it can be handled, and it's a magnitude of different things. We'll have additional drivers, so less driving, less routes in the 512, I guess we would say now. 512, so we won't have as many runs there, so there'll be additional drivers on the other end. Again, as I said in the beginning, transportation for pre-K would be available, but the start time of that isn't known until she puts all the pieces together. So that may be an independent, that may be a combined, depending on where students lie. If they are lying in the outer skirts, they may come in, and then there may be a village run after elementary is dropped off, if that's K4, after they're dropped off. So she'll put that in, she'll run all of those scenarios so that we know what that looks like. So she's confident that it can be done. That's my takeaway from that.
How soon would we know that if we're deciding sending to pre-K or not sending to pre-K?
So it's kind of the horse before the cart, right? I can't move any further until I have direction, right, to move. And then, I mean, obviously we notify community what those routes look like, usually August, right? If we're
I
talking
understand that.
transportation. and
It's
that-
just not helpful as a parent to know, like, I have to be to work at a certain time, so if my pre-K kid's not getting picked up till a certain time, now that's a daycare or another cost, or like, what time are they getting off the bus? And that's different than my other 2 kids.
Well, these things would all be finalized relatively soon, once we get to the point where it's done. I mean, the board hasn't acted on, nothing has been finalized, so, but obviously we want to move things along with whatever direction we're going in so people can know, including us. We need to plan. Cindy's great at doing these logistical items, but she needs time too. So we know she does, we know families do, so we want to have months of time as far as the big picture. Obviously, like you said, the routes are often, it's a summer thing, but the big picture point about time, those kind of things, those would be resolved relatively quickly. So a couple points of clarification again. There were a couple of comments, I just want to clarify it for the record, because again, that's just a statement of fact. There was a claim that, is this some way of masking bad scores, or, which again, I think it's important to clarify that our test performance clearly, and that's again a statement of fact, is improved, and we're proud of that. We were on a state list, for example, before. We're not now. Now, is that the barometer we're using? Do we have aspirations? Of course, we don't want to be on a state list, a bad state list, right?
Doesn't your last slide say it would allow the district in 7/8 to stay in good standing? It has nothing to do with test scores?
Oh, absolutely. So we said that there's a impact. We said, what is the impact of it? So does that change? Here's the key point. Does this in any way change what the scores are? Of course not. when we look at how are we doing in math or ELA, grade level to grade level, those scores are those scores. So anybody can see them. We've presented them publicly. We can make them available to anybody who wants to see them. But it's greatly diminishes the work that our teachers have done, that our students have done. They should be complimented for those strides that they've made that are just, again, that's a statement of fact. So don't take my word for it. That's publicly available at this point. Teachers have done a great job of moving things forward. The kids have worked hard, and we should acknowledge that, not diminish it. Yeah.
For the fourth graders, will, like you said, that the seventh and eighth graders won't be losing access to any activities, but will the fourth graders lose access to activities?
So that was what we were trying, like when we talked about, like, for example, music and extracurricular activities.
So that's for fourth graders and the seventh and eighth?
Yeah, well, and we're, again, the movement, I think, in our school and regionally is, we want to give kids opportunities because we know that a lot of learning happens outside of the traditional day. Now, opportunities came to us when COVID happened. One of the good parts, not many, but one was we had funding to be able to do, for example, some things that we didn't have funding for outside of the regular day. So we've had things like after-school programs. We'd like to, that's why it's important to look at how we spend money. We want to be able to continue to seek out funding or have as many opportunities as possible to help kids outside of the regular school day.
So then would there be potential for, since it would be a 3-4 building, to incorporate those activities for both the third and the fourth graders?
I think a lot of times it makes sense. I mean, some things need to be grade specific, but if it's a good idea, could that concept work at another grade that's age developmentally appropriate? We certainly.
So they wouldn't be like the fourth graders if they did something, they wouldn't be lumped in with the 5/8 graders, they'd be lumped in with like their own activities?
Yeah, and I think some things it depends on what is the activity and how are they called. You know, sports is one thing in the older grades. The esports program that had tremendous interest and is just scratching the surface of. We're looking at how does that in different ways that the experts are recommending that we break it down so that kids get the full benefit. So, you know, I mean, it's not as simple. I think it depends on what the activity is. But in general, the emphasis is going to be let's help and engage kids because a lot of kids are not engaged by the traditional system, right? And so we need to find a hook to help them. Then this was a comment that we got, if it ain't broke, right? And with all due respect, we're going to say, not trying to label things as broken, for example, but can we do better? I've worked in schools for over 30 years. Can we do better? Should we always want to strive to be better? Should we have the high expectations for everybody in the building and for our kids, our community, in every way? Achievement, conduct, class, dignity, hard work, dedication, all the things that matter, all the things that every employer says matters, all the things that we know, just because, you know, in a lot of the cases, those things should be obvious to us. They matter. So we want the best, right? We want the best for everybody involved. And so when we look at the big picture, there's a lot of pieces. We talked about a lot of things today. If we wanted an easier day, the board, business manager, then we wouldn't do these things. You don't always, you know, change is difficult. And I will be the first to say, I'm not naive. I'm not for change for the sake of change. I've been a part of it. Sometimes when I've had to be the person who's executing a plan, not a good feeling. We don't want to just change because it's the flavor of the month that comes down the pike. We want to do things that we think will make us better. That's the bottom line. It's hard work, but it's necessary work. If we look and microanalyze every program, we'll spend forever talking about, well, this is better here, that's better there. And so the standard we have to go to is you know, if our decision or our recommendation makes people mad, that's unfortunate, because anybody who knows me at all would know, hey, we're not doing things to try to egg people on or take shots at somebody from, you know, if we're recommending it, we think it truly is good for kids. And we think that doing these things, yes, is cost a factor. You better believe it's a factor, because there's a lot of taxpayers who will say, well, yeah, you're looking at how we're spending the money, right? And the answer is yes. By doing things, by looking at things closely, that's going to preserve our ability to preserve staffing in programs. If we say, couple $100,000, not a big deal, 50 here, if all in every area, if we're just saying go to the tiger, we're going to have a massive problem. And I'm not trying to cast aspersions on neighbors, but when we get further into the budget season, you're going to see. And again, that's a testament that this board has been financially strong and pays attention to those things. There are districts, I will not name them, but you will see it when you look. There are districts who are in huge financial difficulty. Right, we're coming off of this federal funding, and we have to be lean and mean and efficient in our operation. So, and it's who can do that the best to preserve programs for kids, right? Because we don't want to put up tax hikes that you're going to see in some of the neighboring districts. We're going to put up a reasonable tax levy increase. We don't want to go to our staff and say, we're cutting, X number of teachers. We're cutting this program that we see a value. We're not wanting to do any of those things. And the only way we're going to be able to continue to do that is if we have these discussions. So I can't emphasize enough, it's not about saying people are doing a bad job. This is a systemic thing. It's not something against BOCES. We love working with BOCES. My entire career, I used to work for a BOCE, right? We will continue to partner with them. That's not at all what it's about. It's about just trying to be responsible. Do I make mistakes? Of course I do. Of course. Anybody who's honest would say, of course that we would make mistakes. But will we rest at night knowing that we've done things that we can honestly say, yes, we made a tough financial decision because we don't believe it's hurting kids, and that decision is allowing us to preserve programs and people that we need to be a part of this organization. That financial decision is going to allow us to keep those programs and those people. Yes?
So I have two things to talk about. Realistically speaking, we're trying to be lean and mean. I hear everything that you're saying. Is this all for naught? Is there a possibility to keep the kids in BOCES programs? It sounds like the Board of Education is very much leaning toward this new program.
Well,
We don't even,
yeah.
do we have a fighting chance here?
I guess here's the thing. I guess it's a tough, like you said, I'm not gonna lie to you. That's our recommendation, that we move to this because we believe it's a comparable model and it's much more cost effective. So is that something that we think is a strong possibility? Sure. Is it a done deal? No. I mean, and I've been a part of processes in my career where it literally was just rolled out. The decision was made. There was no conversation whatsoever. There's no feedback. The feedback we get from people is good. Because people see it from different layers and perspectives. But the big pieces, our job is to look at all the big pieces. And this is with no offense to anybody involved with the process, but when you are the person who works in the program or who has a child that has a direct experience, or you're related to, those things all have an impact. And so we've tried to take a step back and say, what does an objective analysis yield to this?
Another thing that I don't think has been brought up yet is that I've talked to a lot of parents in the community, and there are major concerns about the location of the new proposed location of the pre-K program. There's a criminal element.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that's the thing too, it's not anything against Head Start. My business works with Head Start. They're great people, I know them personally. It's not that we don't trust them, it's that, why should I take my child, he's in the half-a-day program right now, he is involved in this every single day. And I see my daughter, she's in 2nd grade, and I love the idea of having the 4th grade. That makes total sense, because I don't want her in the high school listening to all of that. But it's every single day that my child, I bring him to school, he's with the kids he's looking up to, he's growing into that. And doesn't pre-K start at the bottom? That's where my problem is. I get it, I will take him to Head Start, and I trust that you guys are doing the best, but why should I? That's where it starts. And that's where he's learning, and he's gonna grow up watching these kids with amazing teachers who they can handle 18 kids. I went in their classroom a couple weeks ago. They handled those kids like pros. 18 children. Oh my gosh, I can't. It makes me sick to my stomach. Like, I get money, I do business, I get it. I understand that you have to cut ties and do things. But this is more than just moving a building over. This is like our child's life. My son has learned more than my daughter did at 3. This, I know numbers matter, and I get that 100%. But this is like my child's life, that he's gonna have to, he might not even get in, so I'm gonna have to pay for a daycare now if he doesn't make the
We get that. I guess the best analogy I can use is when I put my own kid, you know, I have 2, they're older now, but 2 kids of my own. Knowing what I know, and I was in a position where do I send my kids and what do I do with them when they're little? I would absolutely, in talking, you know, to them and understanding their program and understanding how they operate, I can say with a completely clear conscience, I would without hesitation send them. And that's not to diminish the people that are here, bless you. That's not to diminish the people that are here. We have good people. I know Ms. Carnahan is good. We have good people.
We're blessed. I mean, Ms.
Right?
Carnahan, she's been amazing.
We have good people in our classrooms, but I also don't want to say, because we have good people here, that other people aren't good, and or could they be the same people? I mean, that's the other piece of it. That you know, these are local jobs that people are going to be. We need people to fill them, and those are personal decisions. So that's not something that we're weighing into. But I'm saying that's, you know, Tony was very upfront in saying, of course they're wanting to talk to good people to get in their programs as they expand it. But it's a local company, highly experienced, credentialed, and if we can make that partnership work and we can have a building that's functional and operational, and it allows us to service our K-12 program
I just
fully.
always thought of, because the Peterborough Street is just such an impact on our kids' life, and we lost pre-K when COVID happened, so she never got the pre-K experience. And just every day watching my son go into school and trotting up the stairs, and he goes to library and he goes to music and he experiences that whole thing. Yes, it just doesn't seem like the school experience that he deserves. And I know he might be getting the same level of education or the same teachers that care about them and great lunches and great nutrition programs and all these things, but it's the point that he's into school where he's going to learn and grow up to go up into the grades he's going above. And I don't know, I hope you guys are thinking of it.
Our kids are in the same half-day, 3-year-old program at BOCES at Peterborough, and many parents feel this way.
And these are kids that they're going to grow up, they're going to be going to high school together, junior high together. If they don't go, they're going to lose this connection that they've built. And I don't know, if I can't get into the 54 kids, then I'm going to have to, where am I going to take him? I can't homeschool him. I don't want to pay $200 a week to send him to a pre-K that's half the program that he's going to now.
When I get to go to that one, the 54, like we said, that was going to be no matter what, because when you're looking at it with the numbers, because we're not able to recoup that funding, and because they're of the level, the numbers in the various programs, that factored into it. So that was going to be regardless of vendor, you know, it's a factor. But I think with anything, do we know anything for certain? Again, I would be lying to you if I said, I can see the future and I know everything's going to be great. What I can always promise is that we will look at how can we best help kids. And if this is not something that's good, will we evaluate it? Are we going to have blinders on and say, no, we're stuck with it no matter what? There's not a program that we have in place that is above review and analysis.
That's what it feels like is happening. You know, like it feels like it's already made the decision. You know, we had
to enroll somewhere else.
It just feels.
We already assumed that they're going to start in the fall, so now we've got a very short time frame to enroll in another program if we don't get into the 54 kids.
Well,
And if we don't, then now you're paying childcare, you know, like it's the whole.
well, that's like we
time
said,
that
we want to
don't
move.
have time to plan or to cut costs, let's be honest, to pay for childcare now because they don't get into pre-K.
So what we want to do, here we're in March, and that's where we're wanting to make, you know, that's why we're wanting to move along with recommendations, and we're taking feedback. There's nothing been formalized, but the idea is that we come to final decisions or action in a timeline that gives people many months, you know, to be able to figure out what's the best, you know, best thing for their family.
I applaud your determination and passion to fix a lot of the problems in this district and to bring the kids along, especially the intermediate level. You know, Camden just was rewarded for some the academic program that was outstanding, and I think you can do the same here. And I know that you can, and you've got that passion about you, but I think the prenatal vitamins are extremely important. And if you have a weak child, then there's not too much sometimes that you can do to intervene and make that child a strong student. So preventing those problems, to me, is extremely important. And there's so many parents here who care so much about their children. What about the ones that, not saying they don't care, they just maybe don't have the confidence to stand up for their children or to push their children out. I mean, Canastota's problems many times comes from parents whose children don't really have a voice. And I think that's what the school district represents, standing up for voices for all the children.
And that's what we've tried to expand. That's why we know that back, you know, and I even think of when I was a kid in school, right? Yeah, it was a little bit different in that the focus was, okay, you're going to go to school and take math and social studies. And now we know that, you know, schools do a lot more. Schools wear more hats and partner with families in more ways than they used to. So, like community schools and through the incoming mental health satellite clinic and some of those other resources, they didn't exist, you know. So I agree with you completely. It's going to be every way. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, you know. And again, I guess what we're asking people at least to think about and kick around and give us again additional feedback is, and I'm sure that Tony is a good source of, you know, additional feedback. But we think it's a viable program. It's different. We understand that anything different is going to be met with some level of skepticism. But to get where we want to go and to be the best district we have to be bold in looking at things and not sticking our head in the sand. I don't want to be the district that sticks their head in the sand and misses an opportunity. If we get into this and we just say, you know what, this is not. I'll give anybody my word. I mean, if we say we've determined this is not a good program for students, I don't want to be a part of it.
I'm not saying it's not a good program, but I've been in both programs. I volunteered in Head Start and I volunteered in the pre-K program, the BOCES one presently in the school. And to me, the BOCES program that you have in schools right now is premier. I think I'm just sad that it hasn't been highlighted and spotlighted and brought to the attention of what a piece of, it's a jewel that you have here. And you're starting those children out with such a good foundation as far as social, emotional, everything in that pre-K program that you presently have.
And we agree.
Is outstanding.
Yeah, no, we agree. Here, yes, sir.
You know, we want to look at the big picture, and I understand, and I think of a lot of good things here. But I just feel that by limiting to 54 and not going with the 72 that we have now, we're doing a disservice to the children. And they're losing out. And in all due respect, I believe you did a phenomenal job putting these things in. But what do other districts do to maximize getting this
Districts are doing, as Tony said, they're looking at the same things we're looking at.
Similar, unfortunately. But I think
And
it's
there
worth
was a
pointing out that it's
question-
90 kids because we had 18 at Head Start and the 418 classrooms at, yeah, so it's 90 kids total. So it's almost half the amount of kids we would be servicing for the whole group. So for me, like that's the main point for me is we're cutting the amount of kids.
And taking away the 3-year-old program too.
stuff on the building.
They offer it, but not everybody gets it.
Right, like there's a place next to us, like tobacco, beer, and that's the place that's like right now.
All right. So, let me just move to this piece, because,
I just want to,
so,
I'm sorry, but I think something that subsumes, I think, all of the points made, especially the last ones, is that by your guys' own words, you've been kicking this around for a year. We have gotten this in a matter of days that we have to chew on.
Right.
Why is that happening? And we're supposed to go along with it when we get days to think about it, when the plan has obviously been in the works for the last year.
well, again, so to give context, we would, and again, I think we have to, if we, every time we had a thought about something that impacts the school, so you can't, so we have to do a certain amount of research.
It's like collaboration are used, it just seems like we're kind of being gaslit a little bit.
I mean, you sent out an RFP.
What's that?
You sent out an RFP, so like at that point, it could have been a discussion, because that could have also.
So again, to give some context, we put RFPs out regularly for different services, right? So our role is to be the people who dig in and do the research and the analysis and get to a certain point. This is not to minimize communities or families' input. No functional school does it. No functional school is bringing everything to some type of survey or vote. It doesn't happen. It is incredibly inefficient, and quite honestly, you're putting people in a position, people that have jobs and families and things, you don't have endless amounts of time to have analyzed it to the degree that we've analyzed these types of things. And that's just a piece of the puzzle. You know, there's a lot of programs when you look at any of these things that we have to look at all the time. So the intention.
Existed for 10 years, right? I mean, is it 30? I know, I mean, like in the pre-K portion of it, has that been 10 years? 30. The pre-K portion has existed for 30 years. That's insane. It's insane. This whole thing is insane.
Well, so let me, again, the intention here is to lay out what we're looking at and explain the program, all right? So there's time for other discussion if people want to come in, but let me lay this piece out. And then again, we'll meet with people as much as you want to meet and go over specifics, but we want to make sure that we get this out so that people can look at it.
Any option at all.
What's that?
You never answered if this is the only option or if there's any other alternative. Like, is there other replies to the RFP? Was this the only option that you had?
There was a third provider out of Schenectady that is looking to relocate into the area.
And was BOCES not competitive in this?
Financially, no.
No, they weren't.
So we spent a month speaking with BOCES on how we can, if any way, get the cost point into an area where we don't have a local share. And I'll go back and answer ma'am's question over here from earlier that I needed to look up. What would the tax impact be if we needed to take the full amount? 1.9%.
Sorry, can you say that last sentence? I did a little louder.
Ma'am over here asked what the tax levy impact would be on the portion of the local share, 1.9%.
Does that mean it'll get reduced by 1.9% if we switch to the Head Start-based program, or does that mean it will go up 1.9% next year?
It would be an additional 1.9% upon what we are looking at the levy increase would be. Okay, so I'm saying, if this was specifically to support the additional 200 projected, 200 going into next year, $254,000 local share would be approximately 1.9%.
Have we looked at cutting other types of programs instead?
We look at everything, but again, think of what that is on a $30+ million budget. Every piece of the thing, there are hundreds and hundreds of pieces of the budget that we have to look at. So we do this in each part, but that's a big chunk. There are a lot of things that aren't as substantial as that.
I get that, but we haven't had this financial issue with having BOCES over the past however many years. So why this year all of a sudden it's this big of an impact on our finances?
Right.
There've been different moving pieces to BOCES with what's been offered, or what was full day or half day, or the growing size of the program. Bottom line is, we're in a continuous cycle of looking at it, and now that there's been a track record that Tracy's been able to dig into, and we identify a problem or an issue, then we have to go there and start asking questions. Different things. There's not a perfect timeline where everything is identified at a certain timeline for this issue or that part of the operation. I mean, there's a million factors to that. But a couple of things we just wanted to be able to point out. Again, priority remains, and reasonable people can sometimes disagree. There's rarely things that people will universally agree on, but the goal is to put the best program, and I speak broadly, right? We want programs across the board, because if we spend a couple $100,000, for example, in one area additional, well, something else is going to go, or we're going to be looking at substantial tax increases. And I will say, again, the other thing is, we're not in a position to maintain the status quo. Sometimes remaining where you are makes sense, we get that. But when there's compelling reasons to say that for the good of the overall good of the operation of the district, we should look at some of these options, then that's sort of where this whole process has led us to. So other opportunities to sort of digest some of the things we talked about, come in, and if you want to kick these ideas around more, ask additional questions. And again, the Q&A document will sort of be a living document that we'll add to as time goes on, and as questions come in, because we want to be able to address any of those questions that people have. We tried to intentionally pick morning, afternoon, evening, all over different days of the week. So we're available if people want to come in. If those times don't work, then contact me, contact Tracy, and we'll be glad to work out a time that works for everybody.
It will be on the website.
I'm sorry?
It will be on the website.
Yep.
Is the whole slide deck on the website? I don't know, it's my first time. Is the whole slide deck uploaded to the website? Your presentation?
No, it's not up there now. We're going to be putting some, information, dates, material, all that on the website now that we've gotten through the public presentation.
Watch the live stream.
Right, it's already on the live stream, but we'll be putting, additional information that really answers the questions that we've talked about. The dates and everything will be on the website as well.
Sean, where will the times for the Q&A, like, you go to the district office?
Yes.
For that, or okay.
Yep. Well, we'll update it if there's any change. We'll have the locations posted. I want to make sure that everyone, I'm not sure if all of them were in the same location. We might have had a couple of different locations. So we'll confirm the location. Those are the times and dates, and they'll all be in this complex.
Going back to one question that I asked earlier, is there a reason that I get comparable their program to BOCES program? Is there a reason that they can't house it in Peterborough Street other than the restructuring?
Well, a piece of it is, if we're saying we're committed to a 5-8 middle school concept, then how do the grades configure? It makes sense logistically, without having to do another project, cost-wise, it's cost-effective for us. If we need or want to be able to service kids and families with some of these additional services we're bringing in, we're going to use that for space.
For the older kids though, and then move the pre-K out.
No, those services are broadly used across the district. I mean, those are broad services that we're talking about bringing in. So.
But it's at the cost of moving pre-K out of the building.
Right, which again, in many places that I've worked in, actually I would say probably the majority of places, pre-K is different. They're not fitting into a specific continuum. Unlike any of the other levels of the school, they're housed in different places. Sometimes they've been housed in high schools. They're housed in community buildings, or what I mean. It is a separate and distinct entity. It's not a required program like you're not going to put 4th grade over in another facility. So when you're looking at what are the places that have flexibility, one of the big comments we got from people is, we don't want them around older kids. And when we looked at that space designed specifically, with the bathrooms designed specifically for kids of that age, playgrounds, everything separate, so they're not with an older population, so at the earliest ages, they're not exposed to those older age groups. So those are those are the factors that we've that sort of all played into that bigger picture puzzle. How does it fit
And
together?
similar to that, has there been a discussion about like the safety concerns of the location for where Head Start is now?
Thank you.
Like that seems to be a big concern of that location and the safety there.
Right, like
So
the
has that been
discussion with the
discussed?
village about a reduction in speed zone or stop signs or crosswalks or zoning.
So, again, that's the kind of piece that I want, a person that can speak most, in a most informed way is Tony, because she, and her staff. So I think that's something we can include, because if there's this, they're living it, again, they're living it every day, so they can speak to that specific
I
concern.
think that would be very helpful to a lot of parents, is because that seems to be a very big concern, just the location wise. I mean, yes, we love that it's at Peterborough Street, but the location where Head Start is, with the businesses around there, just how close it is to the road, how busing is, and that kind of thing. Those safety concerns for that young of children, I think more people would want some focus on that.
You can't just say just trust us, because
And that's a good example, like traffic too. Like I've heard comments the other way where they're saying Peterborough's a tough place to get in and out of. So for some people thought it was appealing to not be in that location. But I think, good question. And Tony, I wish we had her.
For a fourth grader, I don't like that my fourth graders have had to walk to school because I'm close enough, I'm, a few blocks away. So it's driven me crazy that they're forced to walk to school. Yes, I walk them to school. So the idea of my third grader being able to stay at Southside, I love that personally. But I think that just hearing about the safety concerns and how those would be addressed.
So we'll have Tony weigh in more specifically about that. So, I mean, that's why the feedback is good. We can incorporate that into, go ahead, what were you going to say?
And I would just say, just listening here again, I think we can continue to engage in more robust conversation with the village, right? And say, if indeed this is a go, there are some things that we want. There are already children there. If there are 4-year-olds or if there are 3-year-olds, there are already children there. And I would also say that if we are successful in getting a SRO contract where we have 2 to service the district now, that would be a location that they are also servicing and programming.
Which is, yeah, that's good.
So I think I mentioned earlier, there was, sorry, it's not my question, but there was, at one time I thought something was put out about, before all of this, about this new program and everything, something put out about pre-K being at Robert Street. Was that completely?
Never came from us. That was just speculation that was circulated.
Okay.
No.
That's what I wasn't sure about.
And that's the tough part, is that things sort of float around, but there was never anything that came from the district. No. Things float around all the time.
Is it are we still looking at, is it a possibility to keep it in one of the schools, the pre-K program, even if it's a new vendor, or whatever?
No, for the reasons that we just outlined of the space, the logistics, to being able to have space for those students and still be able to, add additional services.
That's not for.
I'm saying when we're looking at, we'd be giving up the ability to have as much space as we would. We'd be giving up multiple spaces where we would like to have those additional services to help families housed on the campus.
The
So,
program has to work around the reconfiguration.
Well, again, pre-K is the level that has the most flexibility and space, and that's every community, so.
You talked a little bit about the social emotional learning for the 5th grade to 8th grade. What types of programs are we talking, and what are we talking about for the younger grades too? Because as we all know, bullying doesn't start in 5th grade, it starts much younger.
Sure.
I know the students, even down in the Pedro Street, have been doing social emotional learning classes. So what changes, what like more programming are we offering?
So that's a whole separate presentation, you know. But again, I'll look at Mr. Schultz, who's our point person for some of those initiatives, which we can put on for an additional meeting. But there's a lot of, I think, things that are in the works, again, which we'll constantly evaluate. But we can be more specific, I think, if he has the opportunity to lay that out with what's happening at different levels. Concept might look a little different at different levels intentionally. And then admittedly, some things, you know, the whole point of everything we're trying to do, curriculum and instruction, behavioral expectations, everything, is to try to be consistent and do things in a way that makes sense for that level, but all from a consistent philosophy that's guiding that area. So,
Good foundation.
You got it. Foundation is definitely important, but we appreciate people's comments, suggestions. Again, we know that this is something that's important to everybody. It's important to us too. For that reason, again, join us at any of those sessions. It'll be published again on the website. If those times don't work, if you want to come in and talk individually or in a smaller group, we'll be happy to accommodate you and make that happen. So thank you. Thank you.
Let me get your thing.
I know, but nothing bad. I can get it. Right? I want it. No, I can't. No. Are we gonna post it? It's gonna be posted.
I do appreciate you guys taking the time to do the presentation for us. So thank you to all of you for what you do.
I adore you. You're lovely.
Good night, all.
Good night. Good night. I didn't know I got home with a walker. Holy cow. Okay. New business? In the back? Don't you want to move up front?
There's empty seats.
Hold on. Kate's sick, she can stay back there.
Yeah. Okay. New business. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby approve the FBLA to attend the 2024 State Leadership Conference, April 10th through the 12th, 2024, at the Joseph R. Florino Rochester Riverside Convention. I probably murdered that name. I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? That was a nice
Looks like it'll be
presentation.
a great experience for them.
Say what?
Looks like it'll be a great experience for the kids.
I think so too. That was a nice presentation by Jake. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby approve the early voting ballot application, which I guess we have a copy of actually
Tracy, you got a comment?
in our motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Is there any discussion about that?
Yes.
So, just to be sure that everybody is aware of what this is, so there's a new requirement that has been passed. We need to make available early voting registration to any person that wishes. So, what you'll see in the newsletter will be, you have the ability to request an absentee ballot.
Right.
You have the ability to request an early vote ballot, or you have the ability to obtain a military application ballot, depending on where you fall. So an early vote ballot application is available to anybody. It will be outlined on how to obtain one. But this is brand new for all school districts this year.
In the state of New York.
In the state of
Yes,
New York.
and everybody should have got one. If everybody wants to see it.
But this, we would only fill it out though, right, if we wanted to vote early?
Correct. So you have to request the application, follow the instructions, have it into the clerk by the deadline, and then that cashed to a ballot. You will get logged in, so if you came, and you tried to log in through the inspectors, you
Not
will
gonna work.
have already been logged in.
So I can't vote twice?
You
is what-
cannot.
No.
If you turn it
If you
in, and
request
there,
one, you can still change your mind, show up to the other.
yes, certainly, you can request one and not turn it in, and it does have to be received in the office, according to the deadline, 5 o'clock.
Day of the election.
Yes. Yes, can be brought in, can be mailed in, postmark does not count, needs to be physically in the office by 5 p.m., received by the clerk.
I have another question, maybe that you can or cannot answer. Is this going to be for November too, do you know? For a regular election? Or is this just for school districts right now?
I don't know, I'm just paying attention to school district.
Okay, so we don't know.
I don't know, yeah.
I don't know if November's primary.
I'm guessing yes, but I'm not
I don't know.
positive.
But you probably have to go through the same process, probably.
Correct.
Okay. All right. 2024, interesting year. Okay, do we have a vote?
No. We need.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. So make sure that we look at the website, right, if people are interested in doing this. Okay. Number 3, resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby approve the following inspectors for the Robert Street polling place for the budget trustee vote to be held on May 21st, 2024. Wynn Shaw, Mary Frazina, Doris Jones, and Mildred Bertolaro. Alternate poll workers will be Julie Hood, Mara Luther, Sue Merrill, and Tammy Patney. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Oops.
Again, this is a reminder that effective for this May vote, it will be a paper vote. Machines are not available to us. That information was brought to the board a while back. We were notified by the county. So your 4 inspectors will be doing the actual vote, registering people and logging them in, and then we will need to do a paper count. I am looking at 8 people to do the count. We are looking for 4 others that will be interested for school district employees. So it will come back to you one more time when we find. So one will count, one will verify. Try to be as speedy as possible.
So if we look farther on the agenda, right, that where we're looking at, for example, that we are now going noon to 8 as opposed to noon to 9,
Correct.
right? So,
Really 2 reasons, Doug. When we look back historically, that 8 to 9 hour minimum,
Right.
maybe 5 people.
Right.
Again, we are going to be hand counting.
Right.
And we'd like our results maybe before midnight.
okay, yes, all right, because that's what I was,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. Number 4, resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby authorized to establish a 10-year.
We didn't vote on it, did we?
Oh, we didn't vote on it. Been a long night already. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Sorry. Resolved, number 4, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby authorized to establish a 10-year capital reserve fund pursuant to section 3651 of the education law in the maximum amount of $7,500,000 inclusive of interest to be used for renovations, improvements, and additions to district facilities. Such reserve fund to be funded from any excess general fund money for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024, and thereafter from any excess general fund monies during the term of such reserve fund. Motion. Second.
Second.
Discussion. Tracy.
So a couple points here. One, the board has the authority to approve the resolution. This resolution will go on to the ballot because in order to establish a new reserve, it does need to have voter approval. So that will be a proposition, just like we will have the bus proposition that requires voter approval. Two, if you recall, with the December vote to approve the new project, voters approved the new capital project. In addition, they approved the move and usage of the two capital reserves that were on the books, the 2009 and the 2020 capital reserve, allowing the district to utilize the money to offset the cost of the project. That will leave the district in a position to have no capital reserve on the books. So as we plan for, 5 years out, we would want to have a reserve on the books. So the voter, your approval here, will place it on the ballot, and then it goes to the board.
Any questions? Anybody have any questions for Tracy? Any other discussion?
And that's for 10 years, correct? So from 10, that reserve fund will be created for the next 10 years.
It will be available for 10 years or until such time that the voters approve us to use it. Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Personnel recommendations. All appointments are pending clearance on fingerprinting. Retirements and resignations. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby accept Robert Peck's letter of retirement as a permanent bus driver effective on day June 30th, 2024. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby accept Kyle Montney's letter of resignation as a permanent bus driver effective March 18th, 2024. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby approve Keith Castellaire as a permanent teacher aide / school monitor at $17.25 an hour, effective April 1st, 2024, with a 26-week probationary period. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby approve Julianne Shive as a non-certified substitute teacher at $110 a day, effective March 27th, 2024. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Coaching. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby appoint Alexandria Jones as a paid modified softball coach for the 2024 spring season, step 3 at $3,068, effective April 1st, 2024. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby appoint Bonnie Barlow as the unpaid track coach for the 2024 spring season, effective April 1, 2024. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, board does hereby appoint Ronald Rivera as an unpaid baseball coach for the 2024 spring season, effective April 1. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
You didn't take a motion.
Resolve, let's go, okay, I read that. Motion,
Aye.
and we got a second, right?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby approve the change on April 8th, 2024, from a half-day for students to a staff development day with no students due to the solar eclipse. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby approve the time change for the budget trustee vote on May 21st, 2024, to be held at Robert Street Elementary School in Cafeteria B from noon to 8 p.m. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? And I think Tracy just went over it for the two reasons. Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Regular board meeting on April 16th at 2024, 6:30 in the high school media center. Proposing an executive session. Motion?
Or
What are we talking about?
what are we talking about?
I have to do what?
What are we talking about?
Oh,
The purpose.
Oh, the purpose. Oh, my God. 16 hours on the road yesterday, or Sunday might be affecting me. Negotiations and personnel. Motion?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Proposed executive session.
We already did that.
We already did that. See what I mean? Sorry, people. Maybe I'll go home. Maybe I'll go home with Kathleen.